It's just hours to go until you finally get to make your mark, South Africa. Good afternoon. This is On Point. My name is Arabile Kumete. Let's quickly check in on what's making headlines. A community hall, clinic and a councillor's house have been torched overnight in Viljoenskroon. That's in the Free State. It's the final day as well of special votes, and officials say it's been smooth sailing thus far. Also in your headlines, Transnet chairperson Popo Molefe testifies at the state capture inquiry. Let's get into your lead story now. More than 20 people have been arrested in Ramulotsi, Viljoenskroon in the Free State following violent protests by community members. That's last night. Now, a community hall, which is one of the voting stations, and a clinic have been torched. The community complained about a lack of jobs and old infrastructure, among others. Free State Police spokesperson Brigadier Sam Makele says those arrested are charged with public violence. Now, polling stations have reopened their doors for special voting. It's the final round for this ballot, and electoral officials say it's been smooth sailing so far. Yesterday, the Independent Electoral Commission said it was satisfied with the first day of special votes for national and provincial elections held throughout the country yesterday. Now, despite a few incidents that marred it, reports of road blockades by protesting residents were received, mainly from the Eastern Cape and Limpopo. Police stations close at 5 today. That's polling stations. The general elections get underway in earnest tomorrow, when millions of South Africans will make their mark. Now, police have reiterated that they are ready for tomorrow's elections and are paying close attention and monitoring hotspots in KwaZulu-Natal and in the Northwest Province.
Nationally, the two provinces prioritized is Northwest as well as KwaZulu-Natal. In Northwest, we've prioritized 8 areas, which we also refer to as hotspot areas. And our total deployments, except other interventions, it's over 5,000 that is complement deployed in this province.
Some areas in the province have been identified as a hotspot. Then can you please lay out your plans as of such areas? How many are you dealing with them?
Okay, because of security measures, I'm not going to give all the security details, but what I can give you for now is that for all of the hotspot, the stabilization interventions deployed from both national as well as the province, and that is also supported by defense complement in terms of the integrated forces. While we have deployed on the stabilization intervention to look at those particular crimes, we have also deployed members of the police to secure those particular voting stations.
Of course, throughout our bulletin, we will be crossing live to that results operating center in Pretoria. But for now, to this story where the Amamfengu community under the Tsitsikamma Development Trust have threatened to withhold their votes in the upcoming 8th of May elections if the government does not respond to their grievances over land claims. Now, the community are calling on President Cyril Ramaphosa to intervene and resolve their land claim. They have submitted land claims in 1998 and have been waiting for 21 years.
Tsitsikamma, a little garden of Eden, lush forests, fertile land, towering mountains bordered by the ocean. Here, the Amamfengu tribe thrived before they were forcefully removed to Keiskammahoek in 1977 under apartheid laws. The Amamfengu says the land in question is a 75-kilometer stretch from Humansdorp, extending west past Storms River.
Took us to Keiskammahoek, where we struggled a lot. To be there and stay there. We couldn't cope in that area. Remember, we're coming from a very wealthy area. This land is too rich. We're coming from that land, from the rich land, to the very poor land, dry land. We lost houses being bulldozed by the government, and we lost furniture, children died on the road. We lost our cattle also because we were trying to farm for ourselves, smaller farmers. We were smaller farmers that time, and we were so rich, man, in terms of the land. We were so rich. That's why the government took our land like that forcefully, and we didn't like it.
The Amamfengu people returned to Tsitsikamma in 1994 after the Land Claims Restitution Act came into existence. They feel the injustices of the past have had a generational effect on their families. 2 decades later, 486 household land claims are still pending.
We suffered for a long time, and we're struggling for a long time. Hardly to eat, hardly to plant in the field. There's no, which one? We didn't get nothing from the government department.
Jobs are scarce in the area. Most of the men in the community work on nearby wind and dairy farms. But they believe the land belongs to their forefathers and they should be working there rather.
There are no places to work in the sense that there are only farmers around here. So the dairy farmers, and the dairy farmers, they've got their work, their workers that were already employed there. And then we came to a conclusion as a vertically opposed community with the committees that it's no use for us to chase out the farmers, because the government said to us, they brought the farmers for us, the farms for us, and then now we have to work with those farms. Unfortunately, we don't have the skills to do that.
The aggrieved community also took to the streets to vent their anger. They recently temporarily closed the N2 to get their message across. Residents also threatened to prevent IEC officials to erect voting stations on election day.
We didn't want it to come to this because we don't want to threaten the government, because it's our government. We are the voters of the ANC. We are not turning back our backs to the ANC, but we are, as the community says, there are no polls that are going to be in the area of Amamfengu.
We are here fighting for our rights, and if they are not answered before elections, we will not vote.
Our kids are all over South Africa, from PE, King Williamstown, Cape Town, all over in South Africa. We're going to tell them not to vote if we don't get this money. So the government must answer us, give us a good answer, or pay us our money, not an answer. We must get our money.
The Khoisan municipality received the petition and promised to bring it to the attention of the presidency. The IEC says the matter, an election day threat, has not been brought to their attention. Efforts to solicit a comment from land claims have failed. Jade Lee Paulser, SABC News, Tsitsikamma in the Eastern Cape.
And of course, as I said, we will be crossing to that results operating center out in Pretoria, of course, the hub of where the results come in. It is, of course, a day still of special voting with regards to the elections this time around for the 6th election, democratic elections. Then, of course, this is The Rock and my colleague Nompumelelo Siziba. We may be separated by location, but certainly not in task. Things beginning to warm up at the ROC.
Things are warming up indeed. As you mentioned, it's the second day of the special votes, and the IEC has said that those are running along very nicely indeed. That visual that you see there is the IEC officials, a blend of the IEC officials doing their work and political party officials who will be monitoring results as they come in. That is from tomorrow when voting begins. Well, I'm not sure when the results start coming in, but certainly they're here specifically for that purpose. In the meantime, we do have a breaking story coming out of the Free State, and we're going to cross to my colleague Thabiso Khadebe, who's got that story for us. Thabiso, over to you.
Good afternoon, Nompu. I'm standing here in front of the community hall here in Viljoenskroon, Rammolotsi. It was torched yesterday by angry community members who were complaining about, they are complaining about stands, they are complaining about lack of water. Some of them have been without water for quite some time. So they torched the hall, they torched the community clinic here, and police ultimately arrested 24 people who are, police are saying that they are being charged with public violence, and they are expected to appear in court hopefully on Thursday or Friday. What I can tell you, Nompu, is that the situation here it's very, very tense, although it's calm as police are here monitoring the situation, but it's very tense. But I'm going to be speaking to some of the community members here just to hear what are the issues here at this community, because remember this area falls under the municipality of Mukhaka. Remember the communities out in Kroonstad, in Maokeng, are still having issues. They were protesting some 2 weeks back, and now and today, or rather this week, it's the community of Rammolotsi in Viljoenskroon. I'm just going to be speaking to one of the community members here just to hear what are the issues as far as community is concerned. Can you please tell us the issue? We can see that the community hall has been burnt down, and also the clinic, but we don't say that you burnt the clinic and the community hall. But what are the issues here, ma'am?
Re khathetse ke eng ntate hobane hona jwale ba batla re etse X re ke ra ba etsa X hobane ga lla re le mokgatlo wa Ramolotsi monana ha ona ditentse bo metsi hona jwale ke tswa mosebetsi ha ona re ise ka kwana ka marikana ha ona ntho re tla be re etse re khathetse ntate ga lla re le Khoisan hona jwale ba hira le batho ba re sa ba tsebeng di phone di a kena hona jwale ho itse ditentse batho ba founela ba habo bona empa se hantle ntho e buang ha ne o le mona kaofela e ne le ditaba tseo tsa hore ba tla bitswa empa ba sa bitswa ba family tsa bona di a founela di colleagues tsa bona everything ya founela ba founela ntate le ba mona ba di shopong ga ipotsa gona ma bonnete ba di shopong mona di shopo tsa gona ba di batla ntate.
Yeah, talking about tomorrow, May, you talking about the votings tomorrow. But are you going to vote as the community? What is the feeling amongst you as community members?
A ke gole ntate ba tla hlola ba etsa cross ya bona o yeng ntate bana ke mathata ana ha isale yona ho hang.
You're saying that the dikolo di tswile because there's no water here.
Ntate ke bana ba tletse mona na ga ba bona dikolo di tswile le di preschool ha ke tsebe tsentse di kene ka go bana na le metsi rona ga sokola ntate metsi.
Ke nako e kae e etsala tabena and le la tletleba ho masepala na?
Re bile nako e tele ntate ka ntho na re dula ntse re bua ba bona hore ha re entse ntho e tsena ke bona hore ke yona answer ntate. Ntate.
Okay, I'm just going to translate what she was saying, that initially she said that she's tired of the African National Congress government because they are doing nothing for the community. The community has been complaining about water, they have been complaining about stands, and they don't think that tomorrow they will vote because they have been complaining and their pleas have been falling on deaf ears. So they are not sure whether they will vote tomorrow on the 8th. And later on, we are expecting to talk to the commissioner of the Free State Police, who's going to be telling us about the state of readiness of the South African police services. I'm just going to step out of the shot just for Usbu to show you the bent hall, the torched hall here at the community. As I said earlier on, that 24 people were arrested after they were arrested for public violence, and also the community clinic. So, and also again, we are expecting to talk to community leaders who are saying that they are in hiding because they fear that they are going to be arrested by police. So I can say to you that the situation is very tense, but there's a lot of police members here who have been deployed here to ensure that everything goes well, especially looking at tomorrow's national elections in the country. It's back to the studio.
Thanks very much, Tabiso, for that report. Well, with me now to take a look at what's happening in terms of the elections, I'm joined by Angelo Fick. He's the head of research at OWL Socio-Economic Research Institute. Thanks very much for joining us, sir.
Yes, good afternoon.
Just referring to this clip that we've just seen, my colleague speaking to us live about that community in the Free State, talking about how there's no water, kids are not going to school because they have lack of access to water. The people there want jobs, they're fed up, they don't know if they're going to vote tomorrow. This is something that we're hearing around the country in various communities. It doesn't augur very well for the elections in terms of people voting, does it?
So this is something that happens every election. phenomenon. If we go back to 2014, the people of Bekkersdal experienced the same thing in Gauteng. If we go back to 2009, there were communities that also had this experience. Entire social and political movements are founded on people who are so disillusioned with this. So Abahlali is one of those movements, the Landless People's Movement, people who believe that actually the political system as it runs isn't working for them, and political parties in government are not doing what's necessary to get them the promises that were made to them as the life of post-apartheid South Africa. The question that I think we have in 2019 is how widespread this disaffection is and how much of that disaffection will result in a lack of turnout, and whether the turnout will at all be affected by people's reading of the political landscape and political parties' role in creating that landscape.
Well, let's speak about the number of, or the percentage of eligible voters that did register to vote. That figure stands at about 74%. By historical standards, is that quite normal, or is it a bit more than usual?
It's normal, and what we're likely to see is in general elections, South Africans have as a rule turned out in larger numbers than they have for local or municipal elections. In terms of the global figures, that is quite a substantial number of people in countries where it isn't illegal not to vote. So in countries like Australia, where voting is a requirement and there are consequences if you don't vote, in a country like South Africa and spaces like it, there is a growing, shall we say, what people call a buyout, where people are not actually that invested in the political system because they don't see their ideals reflected in it. Part of that also has to do with the way in which people are socialized to think of political behavior, the way they think of consumer behavior. If you don't like it, you simply stop going to it. The danger of that is, of course, that in a majority young country like South Africa, the majority of people are young, and the future that they will have to face is currently being decided by people who are not young. And so opting out of the electoral system may buy you a future that is infinitely more dire than it could be had you bought into even a system that you find deeply problematic. Because it is the fine line between voting for people who will not be alive in the second half of the century, but trying to create a future that is less dire and deeply problematic than it could be in the second half of the century.
Speaking to the issue of young people, I see those who are just recently eligible to vote, that is 18-year-olds, only 18.5% of them registered to vote. Does that speak to political immaturity, them not realizing that they have a role to play in the public political discourse, or does it speak to disaffection?
It could speak to both of those, but I think what it also reveals is a profound and really deep-seated problem in post-apartheid South Africa around civic education and critical literacy. Now, we know what the literacy figures are for 10-year-olds in this country, and we need to worry because 8 years from now those will be voters. And this is a concern that I have with current 18 and 19-year-olds, that it's easy to simply say these people are disaffected. We as a state have to ask ourselves questions around to what extent as a society did we create the conditions for people to be so disengaged or so disillusioned that this is the level of registration or the level of participation.
All right, Angelo, we're going to leave it there. Angelo is going to be speaking to us for the duration of the show, giving us his comments and views on the whole election process. We're going to cross to my colleague Diabo Sito, who's mixing and mingling with officials on the floor. Diabo, it's over to you.
Yes, I'm certainly mixing and mingling with the officials of Telkom. As you enter the Rock Center here in Pretoria, you'll realize that you see a lot of Telkom branding across the hall, and this means that they are the main sponsor here at the IEC. But what I want to do is to delve into their journey. They're 25 years into since democracy. They were only founded in 1991. Of course, we got our democracy in 1994, which means that they have been there since the beginning. We'll talk about the evolution of the company and, of course, what they are sponsoring here at the IEC. I have with me Mr. Siyabonga Mahlangu, who's the head of external affairs at Telkom, joining me right now. Mr. Mahlangu, thank you very much. It's a momentous year and a momentous occasion for every South African to be once again going to the polls and making their mark for their preferred candidate and their preferred government. But everyone in South Africa, if you're a South African citizen, Telkom is a company you know. It was only founded in 1991, but since 1994, a lot has happened, or since 1991 when it was founded, a lot has happened to where we have been. Take us through the evolution of Telkom.
Thank you for having us. We not necessarily a sponsor, and we provide infrastructure support to make sure that the elections run smoothly. and we all get our results on time. Telkom is over 140 years old. Yes, it has evolved through different historical epochs, and in the last 25 years, we've seen Telkom transforming from a fixed line operator to a fixed mobile converged operator. We offer full services from connectivity, mobile services, and IT services through our different business units and subsidiaries. So it's been quite an interesting journey, and right now we are all gearing ourselves for the fifth generation network. So everybody's looking at making sure that we place South Africa at the right level of competitiveness across the globe and in the continent.
There was a time where South Africans knew Telkom as a state-owned company. In 2003, that journey changed and you became partially privatized. And of course, there were jobs lost. You know, this was part of the evolution, and also a lot of managers came through. How have your customers received these changes?
So far, I think we have been very received favorably by our customers. This is reflected by the growth in our subscriber numbers. You will see that we have had very good products that we've brought to the market, and we have at least been a very good challenger to what now are established, or at least the top 2 mobile operators. We've given them a run for their money. I think we've become one of the best household brands in the mobile space, and actually in the fixed mobile space, people mostly depend on us for connectivity in their homes. So I think that we must look at the opening up of competition in South Africa in the communication space from around 1993. There were 2 mobiles that were introduced first, and then there was a third mobile that came in. Telkom actually used its own resources to power the introduction of mobile telephony in South Africa. You will recall that Telkom was a shareholder in Vodacom. Yeah. So Telkom has always been a pathfinder. And right now, today, we're also trying to make sure that our superior network and our the superior skills that we have in the company benefit the country, yes.
I would be doing a great injustice if I do not ask, how far the journey is in terms of lowering data costs for our viewers at home who are your customers. How far is that process with Telkom?
We've been doing very, very well. We are the most affordable in the market at the moment, both in terms of the capacity you get from us and also the quality of the data that you'll get from us and the speeds. So we've got a product called FreeMe. It is the talk of the town. Anybody who uses FreeMe knows what FreeMe can give you. It is the best in the market at the moment.
Let's talk about the infrastructure that you said you are providing to your customers, which is the IEC here, and your role here. Tell us more about what services precisely you are giving your customer, who is the IEC.
We are enabling the ICT infrastructure broadly, so both from the IT side and from the telecommunication side. So most of your broadcasters and your international media will depend on Telkom for most of the feeds from here. We're connecting all the result stations. We're connecting all the information from the different VDs right up to headquarters and to the result operations center. We've got technicians that are working around the clock to make sure that you get your results on time, to make sure that there's seamless communication between the different voting districts right up to the headquarters and to the results operations center.
Siyabonga Mahlangu, thank you very much. You are the head of external affairs at Telkom. We do thank you for making time to speak to us. Nompu, if you were wondering when you walked in here what Telkom is doing, I think Mr. Mahlangu has given you a good idea of their role here and also their evolution since 1994, since we are celebrating 25 years of democracy, and we are heading to the polls tomorrow and with the end of the special vote season today.
Thanks very much, Diabo, for that. And now we cross to the Eastern Cape, where my colleague Iviwe Poti is standing by. Iviwe?
Hi Nompu, definitely we are here in Stutterheim in the Amahlati municipality. We are in a rural area, but we just going to speak to a community leader to tell us in terms of you'll remember that this is an area where towards the end of last year there was a lot of disgruntled community members who were very unhappy in terms of service delivery and the development within this area, and we saw that throughout the voter registration period there were no voter registrations here, but driving in here this morning looking at the special vote centers, everything was going really well. We saw a lot of police visibility, community members were done around 12 o'clock, the voting stations were closed around 12 o'clock. Where we are now, we know there were about 20 home visits. Those were also finished by today, earlier on around 11. But let's speak to a community leader to tell us in terms of last year, obviously, so there were a large number of people that were very unhappy in terms of service delivery, etc. But we see that this hasn't affected voting as it was said it would towards the end of last year. Are you happy with the development that is happening thus far? We see that the area is peaceful as well.
Oh, hello, Sis Iviwe. After a very long time, we've been into this struggle. We've been fighting for our people up until we got into a point where we took a firm decision, a vehement decision to say we are not going to vote. I mean, we are not going to register to vote. So now, however, with all that being said, people have regathered, our people has restructured their thoughts, and we said no. Let us go and vote for an organization that is going to, or that is willing to serve our people.
And then in terms of the people, specifically your first-time voters that weren't able to then register to vote, what about those people that won't be able to vote?
About those people, no. Can you can't cut this?
No. And then in terms, okay, we will pass on that question then. Just in terms of tomorrow, what are we expecting to see tomorrow? Will the community members come out in their numbers also to come and place their vote? As you've said, that this is a community that's looking to have a leadership that will serve the people, the development and the service delivery of this area.
Tomorrow, I'm expecting, or I'm willing to see our people going to the stations, and they're willing to go and cast their votes. Yes.
Thank you so much for your time, sir.
All right. Sure.
Well, there we have it. I'm just going to ask cameraman Akobile to also show you in terms of the area that we are in. We are in a rural area. He's just going to show you in terms of where we are standing. It's a bit windy, very quiet in this area. And as I've said, you'll remember towards the end of last year, this was an area that had a complete shutdown for almost about a week, almost about 4 municipal buildings that were torched by disgruntled community members. However, because an intervention had been done at that time, and this is a community that's crying out for change, they are saying that they've rethought and restructured in terms of not going to the voting polls, and they'll definitely come out in their numbers tomorrow as well.
Thanks very much, Iviwe, for that report. As you can see, we're crissing and crossing across the country in every nook and cranny around the country to find out what you, the ordinary South African, feels around these elections, asking you what you're planning to do around your voting and so on. But with that, let's cross to my colleague, Abra Barbier, who's standing by for us in the Western Cape. Abra?
A very good afternoon to you. Yes, you are right. We are all over the country. I happen to be in one of the most beautiful parts of the country. I've been deployed to the Southern Cape, one of my favorite parts of the country. I am currently in Mossel Bay, and it is very quiet here in Mossel Bay. Mossel Bay, of course, has been voted to be the best run municipality. This was recently a vote done recently, and we are going to be speaking to the local Chamber of Business later on this afternoon about what makes Mossel Bay tick and why this is such a wonderful town to live in. We were also in George, that's where we are based for the elections. We were in George. George has also an online international survey voted or ranked George to be the best place or the town with the best standard of living. So this was an online survey, and residents, of course, they voted for their town. George, however, was also recently rocked by protests, and these are protests which, like in other parts of the country, deal with service delivery. And what is happening in George at the moment is that between 50 and 70 families are moving to George. George used to be a retirement village, right? It was a very laid-back town. My colleague actually who lives in the area, Spiwe, said to me yesterday, we actually have traffic in George now. And he's basing this on the amount of people who are relocating to the area. It's no longer a retirement village. Younger couples are moving to the area, finding business opportunities between 50 to 70 a month. Of course, this is putting a strain on service deliveries at hospitals and at schools. In one of the other areas in Georgia as well, there's been a big fight with residents, those who don't qualify for subsidized bonds. There's a government scheme running at the moment, and anybody earning from 3,500 rand to 20,000 rand, they qualify for the government, the subsidized scheme. Those of those earning less, they get RDP homes. But there seems to be a tussle in that regard, because people who qualify for the bond, for the subsidized bond, they too now also want the free RDP houses, because they say they can't actually afford the bonds. We've also been to Knysna, where we were speaking to people on the ground. Knysna, of course, is a very interesting and diverse community, definitely a gem in this country. Lots of the people I spoke to said that they will be voting tomorrow. They are voting for change, they are voting for better quality of life, they are voting for a party you can promise them that it will tackle crime, a party you can give them housing. There is, however, one specific community in Georgia, and that's the Rastafari community, who they reside in an area called Judas Square. It's the largest Rastafari community in the country, and based on their beliefs, they won't be going to the polls tomorrow, because they say that it's not part of their belief to go and vote. They're not discouraging any other of their members to not go and vote. They say if any of their members do feel that there is a party who can make a difference for them, they encourage them to go and vote. But as a collective, they say they will not be going to the polls tomorrow, because in fact, what they said is all politicians are the same, they're all birds of the same feather, and up until such time that they believe there is somebody who can represent them and speak to them, they won't be going to the polls tomorrow. But at the moment, what I've seen in the Southern Cape, it's peaceful. We're not expecting any hotspots, we're not expecting any drama, but of course we will be staying in touch with you, and we will be updating you with events as they go by. So I will probably be speaking to you later. Nompu?
Thanks very much for that, Abra. And so now we cross to my colleague Ayanda Mhlongo, who's standing by for us in KZN. What's happening where you are, Ayanda?
Very good afternoon to you, and yeah, well, certainly quite a busy day for the IEC officials here. Most importantly as well, law enforcement agencies, since we've been reporting this morning, yet again after the wave of protests in different parts of the province, waking up to service delivery protests again here in the province of KwaZulu-Natal this morning, requiring additional deployment of police officials in those areas. But from the security point, Nompu, the security agencies have been continuously updating us, saying that they have enough members on the ground. They've identified areas that are tense at the moment, where they are extremely volatile. Yes, they are concerned about these increasing number of demonstrations that are now seem to be in some areas rather well coordinated, but saying that they have enough manpower, and they also have additional pools where in certain areas they are finding that they then need those reinforcements. In terms of the IEC, as we know that it's now 5 hours away from the 5 p.m. cut-off time, and some of the delays caused by the demonstrations have meant that in certain parts IEC officials have started rather late to conduct the home visits, as well as the blockages where some voters who intended to cast their special votes being unable to get to their voting stations. The IEC had, as early as yesterday, said here, particularly in KZN, that looking at the high number of applications that they received, over over 100,000 people who had made applications for special votes, that because of the disruptions that started yesterday and today, they were unlikely that they were going to be able to visit, to make all those home visits, as well as there's about over 30,000 people that were going to be making their way to the voting station. So a lot of concern, Nompo, around the service delivery protests. We're also receiving information that there has been threats on IEC officials in Alfred Duma, which is in the Midlands, in Mkanyogote and Zululand area, which is in the northern parts of KwaZulu-Natal. And so security around protecting the IEC officials has also been increased, we understand. There's also some concern that trucks were blocking the highways, the N3 and the N2. We are told that police officials aren't there. So in terms of the IEC, a lot of concern around these service delivery protests, particularly the concern now is tomorrow and what is going to transpire tomorrow. But just speaking about what has been happening here in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, it was expected. Law enforcement agencies had said that they had already, through the intelligence, gathered information that we could have seen protests in certain areas, but some saying not to the extent that we've seen over the last 2 days. But I'm now joined by independent political analyst, Precious Lukayeni. Thank you very much, Precious, for your time. You'll be with us, of course, today and tomorrow and Thursday when we unpack the results. But we've been speaking to you critically. We've been seeing the IEC officials rather worried about this wave of public protests that we've seen now in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, threatening. And I suppose the big concern now is what's going to happen tomorrow.
Well, thank you, Ayanda. I think the issue of protest is worrying. It should worry everybody. However, we cannot underplay the importance of the things that people are complaining about. Some of the things that people are complaining about should have been resolved long ago. However, the protests today and tomorrow in particular are actually disturbing the elections. And the elections are a national issue. And also we are disturbing the rights of other people who want to go and vote. But this is a lesson for us as a country to resolve problems as speedily as possible. Those protests, for example, in eThekwini, where people are complaining about salaries, for example, that's a matter that should have been resolved earlier. And also, they are using this time because the employer is at its weakest now. So I think it's something that we should learn from. But the issues that people are complaining about, those are the issues that should have been resolved long ago.
The work of, particularly, let's speak now about the government of KwaZulu-Natal saying that they've been trying, they've been going out. Do you think it was possibly a little too late? Let's take the eThekwini issue, for example. It's a matter that has been raised for quite some time. Workers were waiting for them to resolve and find out as to how MK soldiers could be given more money than other workers. And suddenly now, just days before we are to go to the elections, we now see workers down tools.
I think the intervention was a little too late, because as I said earlier, this matter should have been resolved long ago. And also people should have seen that if they increase the salaries of the MK veterans, that will cause dissatisfaction and unhappiness amongst other workers. So that is a matter that should have been resolved earlier. But I think also the homework was not done properly in terms of dealing with the MK veterans.
Safety and security has always been a problem in KwaZulu-Natal. You know our history of violence. We're now speaking about threats and attacks on IEC officials. I suppose just even looking beyond these public protests, there is also other security concerns. There was a shooting in Escort, and the worry that KwaZulu-Natal should not find itself back in this very deep and dark past that it comes from.
Not necessarily even a dark past, it's a very recent past. You will recall that a few days ago, one of the ANC Youth League guys was gunned down in Echongweni, which will be unfortunate. We shouldn't go back there. But also it's worrying that 25 years later, we still shoot each other and we still can't resolve our problems by talking and negotiating or whatever. It's worrying, honestly. Even the IEC said the KwaZulu-Natal will be the hotspot and they will deploy as many police as possible, which we shouldn't be doing that 25 years later.
All right. Madam Treasurer, thank you very much for your time. We're going to leave it there. I know you're going to be joining us throughout our election coverage as we'll be based here at the Results Operating Centre in Durban. Certainly, we're still going to be monitoring the situation there, Nompo, on the ground. We're hoping again to speak to our analyst on tolerance later on here in KwaZulu-Natal, which seems to be another issue now that authorities here are going to be faced with. In about 30 minutes' time, we will be getting a briefing from the IEC on the latest with regards to the special votes, how many votes they were able to get through yesterday, and what the picture is looking like on the ground today. They will not be able to extend the hours. 5 o'clock is the cutoff time, they have said, and already they've said that those people who will be unable, where the IEC officials were unable to get today, that they make special arrangements for those voters to get to the voting stations tomorrow. But we are here at the Results Operating Centre, and we'll be continuously giving you information that is coming out of not only here but across the province of KwaZulu-Natal. I'm going to leave it now here at Nompu and back to you.
Thanks very much for that, Ayanda. And of course now we must cross to Palisa Mweti, who's standing by for us in the Free State. Palisa, over to you.
Well, we're still here at the Results Operations Centre in Bloemfontein. This is where all information of what's happening on the ground is coming in. And, you know, I must say that while the IEC has reported that the special votes have been mostly smooth running, there's been some challenges. And these are particularly in those areas that were identified as hotspots. You know, your Marquardt and Viljoenskroon. We know that earlier today, residents in Marquardt were still insisting that there will be no voting if their demands for better services are not met. And, you know, we also know that in Viljoenskroon, residents there today managed to burn down the clinic as well as the local hall, you know, as a form of protest. With demands for better services. But right now we're going to talk to a political analyst, Dr. Trace Macheta, who's just going to take us through, you know, what these protests actually mean on the ground and what do they mean for elections. Dr. Macheta, thank you very much for affording us this opportunity to talk to you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Tell us about these protests. What do they mean on the ground?
I think before I say what do they mean, it's an indication that in the last 5 years, the government did a disservice to the people. First, by not educating people that there are channels within a democracy on how to deal with the issues. And because a protest at this time of election does not really help much, except that people are destroying what is actually theirs, because they are the government. We just choose the representatives too. It is said that as South Africa we still express ourselves by burning buildings, by destroying property. And when we as society understand what it is, I think as political parties have failed the people of the Free State. The government has failed the people. There's lack of political education. People need to know how to go about dealing with difficult issues of service delivery. The issues of local government are now affecting provincial and national elections right now. But apart from that, it is that we take people for granted. And I've been saying it, even with local government elections in 2016, even 2014 national elections, to say our government, political parties take people for granted. The Free State has got small towns of people who do not know where to go when there are problems. But our politicians do not invest in meeting with the people, in talking with the people, really listening deeply and giving feedback. Now running to these elections, if you may look back, the ruling party, the ANC, instead, remember in 2014, we gave a new mandate to the political parties represented in the legislature. We gave a new mandate in 2014. So political parties should be accounting on what they did from 2014 to now, not 1994. By going back to 1994, it's proof that we have not done much in the last 5 years. We are still holding on to what we did in the beginning. We still hold on to Madiba. And that in itself, as much as it's wonderful, it says we have not yet developed another Madiba. So societies are angry. That is why even the mood, it's mixed. There's excitement, there's anger, and there's sadness. I mean, when I say excitement, there are those people who know for sure that they cannot keep on doing the same thing and expect different results. It's about time. There's options. You know, we almost doubled the number of political parties we had in 2014. So there are options. So if this particular party did not serve you well in the last 5 years, as a voter, you know that there are alternatives. Two, those who are angry, they need to know that there are processes, even beyond tomorrow. There are processes, and the sad part is that people are not aware that we will still be talking service delivery. In fact, what they can do now to ensure that service delivery happens is to improve the power of the opposition. Any democracy with a powerful opposition performs, and that's what we need. The sadness in the feeling and the mood is that there are young people who thought there might just be a way of sneaking registration because now the excitement is building up and they realize now they will not be able to vote tomorrow. And that is the situation. But I think more than anything, political education is critical, electoral education is critical, and for people to understand that beyond elections, once you have given political parties a mandate, how do you keep them accountable throughout the 5 years and stop them from going back to 1994 and talk about the 5-year of the new mandate?
Thank you very much, Dr. Makgetha. That is political analyst Dr. Choice Makgetha, who's very clear to say that people in this country are definitely not happy, and that, you know, there's definitely a need for smaller parties to come together and perhaps look at forming a coalition government to form a stronger opposition. But with that, it's back to you in studio.
That's Balisa. And so now we cross to my colleague Diabo Sito, who's standing by for us on the floor. Diabo?
This yesterday, where we tried to show you the exhibition center here at the IEC Center, where when you come in the entrance, this is a nice exhibition of celebrating 25 years of democracy. And I've asked the spokesperson of the IEC, Ms. Kate Babela, to join me to take me through what all these panels are about and what they are trying to show. I'm noting from the previous interview with the political analyst, Ms. Makgetha, that, you know, the young people out there are now starting to feel what they call a FOMO, a fear of missing out, when they did not register, and now the hype is beginning to build up and they're realizing that they may have made a mistake by not wanting to participate in national elections, because of course if you do not vote you cannot complain about anything because you did not make your mark. But back to this exhibition, Ms. Babela, thank you so much for your time. First of all, take me through this panel and what the inspiration is of coming up with this exhibition stall. I found it very, very fascinating indeed.
The full exhibition represents the full complement of IEC work. What it means, we've got 3 divisions within the IEC. You've got outreach, you've got corporate services, you've got electoral matters. All of these 3 divisions, they present the full complement of the Electoral Commission as an elections management body. I want to start with this particular panel. I call this commission the iconic 1994 commission. This is the commission that brought us the 1994 elections that the whole world still resonates about. So this is the first grouping. After this, then we moved on to this commissioners who would then ushered in stability in terms of systems, technology, what we are currently experiencing as an organization. I'll take you through later to the IT panel that explains that process. But this is the generation that stabilized our organization and brought in a whole new of technology, systems that are in place, what is being enjoyed by the world, because that's why every now and then you've got elections management bodies coming to our world to come and experience what are some of the things that we're doing. And then this particular commission, I call it the Now Generation Commission. It's the Now Generation. This is the commission that brought us the XE campaign for the 2019 national and provincial election. So these are the current masters of our house that ensures that our country are going to be going through to the elections on the 8th of May. So this is the full complement of the leadership of the IEC from 1994 right up to the 2019. Yes.
No one told me when I asked who this lady is. You know, I'm very curious about who this lady is.
This lady is the famous queue worker, where before you even see any of our voting stations, you are going to come across this lady called the queue worker. They'll ask you, you've got your ID, are you ready? And then by the time you walk into your voting station, the lady queue worker has already queued you for voting.
She's so stylish, I love her skirt. Okay, we are going to move now to the IT and Technology Board.
This is the board that drives our work. There's this famous, the handheld zip-zip. The zip-zip is what, when you come into our voting stations on Wednesday, our officials will scan your ID. That's the machine. We call it the magical handheld scanner, the zip-zip. After you've gone through the zip-zip, we know for sure that you're on the voters' roll. You'll be in that voting station, and then they'll allow you then to proceed with the rest of the voting process. So this is the full technology of our work. So this is where, when they scan the ID, and then this when they check, when they do registration, they use that map to make sure that you are in the right ward or the right VD. That's what they do. And then there is our officials, this panel here, this one is our officials at a voting station when they're checking. You know that the lady queue work, there's the lady queue work. They're checking if that person has got the right ID, then from then they proceed and then come through to the voting station.
We are not done, but for now, I know that my colleague has to look at other places around the country about how the special voting is coming along, and I'm noting that we are also here, so I'm very proud. SABC News is also here. With that, I'll hand over back to Nompu, who will be crossing over to the next region. Nompu, over to you.
Thanks very much, Diabo, for that. And so now we cross to my colleague, Keith Seister. He's standing by for us in Khayelitsha in the Northern Cape. Keith, over to you.
A very good afternoon to you, Nompumelelo. I'm coming to you from the town of Garis here in the Northern Cape, in the Kamisberg municipality region. Now, just a little bit of information about this town and this region, Nompumelelo. Communities have been complaining about water problems for years here, especially in the summer. They have no water. As we speak right now, there is no water in this town. And this voting station has no water as well, Nompumelelo. But just to give you a sense of how special votes went in this area, I've got the presiding officer from the Garis area here to speak to me about how special votes have been going in the area. Mr. Lottering, how has the special votes been going in your area?
Yes, so far it went very, very well. We had no incidents of irregularities or discrepancies due to the competency of the IEC staff here in Garis.
Now tell me, how many special votes have you got for the whole of the Kamisberg area, sir?
In the Kamisberg, we've got about 479 for special votes, and in Garis itself, we've got about 74 special votes, 53 of them home visits, and then 21 voting here at the voting station.
So how many of those special votes do you still have to do for today before you close at 5 o'clock?
We still had to do about, say, 7 votes today, then we'll close at 5 today.
How is tomorrow going to look at how many voters do you have that's going to vote at this specific voting station tomorrow?
Tomorrow we expect to get 1,330 voters tomorrow that will come and bring out their votes for tomorrow.
There we have it, Nompumelelo. It looks like there's going to be quite busy here at the voting station here in Garis. We'll be crossing a little bit later to give you some more information from the ground here in the Namakwa region. It's back to you in the studio, Nompumelelo.
Okay, thanks very much, Keith, for that. Well, that's all we have for now. We're going to cross back to the Johannesburg studio where my colleague Arabile... Oh, apologies for that. Now we're going to cross to my colleague Sientleng Lihihi, who's standing by for us. Sientleng, over to you.
Sientleng Lihihi. We're here in Madinonyane in the Northwest Province.
some 60 k's from Khayelitsha. We understand that this community has been embarked in these protests for the past 2 days, boycotting elections and ensuring that there will be no elections here taking place. We understand that the major thing that they're complaining about at most is that they want that the road leading here from Khayelitsha, about a 14-kilometer stretch of road, to be tarred adequately. They want to ensure that government hears their pleas to bring much needed services to this area. They say their vote will determine whether or not they will, in fact, they say that their delivery of services will determine whether or not they vote. More background on this situation. I'm joined by a local leader here, Memunchu. Memunchu, can you kindly order
re le baagi re ngongorogela ditirelo mo kgoraneng ya rona ya borobedi re ngongorogela le tsela e sa le kae tlogetse ko fragase re le baagi re buile le bone seemo gone jaanong ga se se ko tlase mme re sentse re leka go bua le baagi mme ga re bua le baagi se se teng baagi se ba se ntshitseng ka molomo wa teng ba re ba batla mokhuduthamaga wa ditsela ba batla majoro wa karolo ya kagisano molopo ba tla go arabela gompi jono gore ba tla go arabela ke gone ba ka yang go ditlhophong go kwadilwe hatsi in black and white gore ba dumalana gore dio tsotlhe tsa baagi ba di lelela ke metsi ke ditirelo ga gona sepe baagi ba ngongorega ka gore ga ba bole go dula hatsi ba bua mokhanselara morongwa pusong wa rona wa corona borobedi ga se ka tlo go ba retsa go tloga le gompieno
maemo a tsweletse taelong dikoloi di hisitswe bana ba tshwerwe la reng le baagi seamo sa go tokagala leng
re le baagi seamo se ka tokagala re batla tota mokhuduthamaga a hologa a tla ko mo baaging re kopa thata le ene morongwa pusong wa corona borobedi jaaka gape ba mmeile go tle ke meyara a tla go bua le baagi ka tlhamalalo le MEC wa ditsela.
What Memunchu is explaining to us there is that they have actually been trying to communicate at great lengths with local government and the municipality about their needs here as a community. They say that they have actually written to all these authorities but have gotten no adequate response from all the authorities that they have attempted to speak to. They say that this is their way to show that if they don't get any answers from government, they will continue in this manner and voting will not continue. Whether it's special elections or or tomorrow's votes, they will not happen. I'm joined by another community member here. He has to actually explain to us. IEC ga le letle le gore tsene me go ralla naga baagi ba bang bone ba tsa karolo mo ditlhophong
ke ka mashwabi seemo be se eme ka tselentseng jana. The premier was here last week. He failed to respond to our community in terms of tsela yone e re le mo go yone e. Tsela e ne le 57 kilometers. E approvile yalo e le 57 kilometers ya ntshetswa tšhelete e kana ka 264 million plus 100 million e na tla go morago. At the end of the day ba paletswe ke gore ba heletse project. Community ya rona ga ina problem ya gore ka vote.
All right, that was my colleague Sientleng Lehihi giving us that report there. We're going to cross back to Auckland Park to Arabella Gumede and of course have more election coverage for you in due course.
Yeah, well, my colleague Nompo Malele Sizeba, they're out at the Results Operations Center, of course, out in Pretoria. We'll continue to give you rolling coverage of that as well throughout the day and as elections kick off. It is day 2 of special voting, and we'll continue to give you live coverage of that and a whole lot more. Do stay tuned. We will have your headlines at the top of the hour. But for now, let's take a quick break. I'll be back with you right after this.
We're explorers. We always have been.
endlessly curious, always looking for answers, for new frontiers, for new stories. Because that is who we are. From script to screen, from yelling action to taking you on a journey. Radio producers, script writers, on-air presenters, news reporters, sports analysts. We spend late nights creating captivating storylines and earlier mornings keeping you informed, educated, and entertained. For us, it's not a job, it's a calling. We do this and more because you do your part. SABC TV licenses, made possible by you.
Exe, kisireletsa bokamoso baka le lelapa laka.
Exe.
I want my voice to be heard like this.
My exe is my truth. My exe is my weapon.
With my ex, there's no problem that
Good afternoon and welcome to the second hour of On Point. We're just hours away, 17 to be exact, from when the polls will open and South Africa begins to make its mark and elect a sixth democratic parliament there, with the sixth democratic elections set, of course, for tomorrow. We will be giving you more coverage of that and even heading off to the ROC, the Results Operations Center out in Pretoria as well. We'll continue to give you coverage of that and other stories across the day. My name is Arabile Kumete and welcome to our SABC3 viewers. Here's what's making headlines this hour. The IEC in the Free State says the torching of a community hall in Khoisan will not affect elections in the area. It's also the final day of special votes and officials say it's been smooth sailing thus far. And Transnet chairperson Popo Molefe testifies that the state capture inquiry. We'll get into that and even the state of South Africa's markets. Let's cross now to my colleague Nompumelelo Sizeba, who should be at the National Results Operations Center in Pretoria. Nompumelelo, good afternoon to you.
Hey. All right, we're here at the National Results Operating Center of the IEC. There's a hive of activity already, even though the main elections only begin tomorrow. The visual that you see there are of political party officials and IEC officials just looking at various data and so on. But of course, tomorrow will be the critical day. And for now, we cross to my colleague, Phumelele Mdlalane, who's standing by for us in the Free State. Phumelele, over to you.
Nambu, we can see the mood here already on the elections. Of course, you can see a hive of activities. Also, this is a town for the Premier of the Free State, Sisi Ntombela, has just arrived to cast her vote here. She is joining me just now. Mama, Free State is big, and we understand this is your town. Why, though, did you choose your town?
This is my home. This is my town. This is where I grow up. That is why I wanted to come and have my vote here at home. Charity begins at home.
We know that the municipality has been under administration and residents, of course, complaining about services. What can they expect from now?
You know what, if you can see the place, the rural area, almost with the population of 8,000 to 9,000, almost 90% of people depending on the ground, it is a rural area. So most of the people who are staying here, they don't pay their services. Of course, they don't have money to pay services because they depend on the grant. That's why they are not. That's why the municipality, so difficult for the municipality to do some of the work. But indeed, dwelling has changed. I was the teacher here. I'm from the school that I was teaching. The school has been built, very beautiful, very big, Kolani, and at that time, we never had a secondary school, but today, in this rural area, we are having a secondary school by the name of Rifentabo Secondary School. You have seen for yourself, we have passed along the way, and there is an ECD that has been built, a very proper ECD. The face of the ECD has changed from Kuku to the real ECD. You can see for yourself for the streets, some of the streets of Twede. Paving is busy happening. We are paving the street and we have built some houses. Yes, we do have some problems there and there, but the improvement is here and I'm very happy. And they must expect, they have seen we have already started. We are going to continue from where we left. We are still going to build houses for those who don't have houses. We are still going to make sure that the streets that have not been paid must be paid. We are still going to make sure that what is it that you can make sure that our children get bursaries. Most of the children who are from here, they go to university with the bursaries. We have 7 children who are studying international, who are outside the country, but we are also having the high standard youth center. I wish you could see it. The youth center is here and the NYDA offices, the regional ones, are here in this rural area. So I think really the African National Congress is really doing something, and we must just continue to do what we have been doing.
Another burning issue, Premier, I know that you are, of course, the leadership of the Free State. Marquardt has been a problem. Yes. We've seen a violent protest there. Just yesterday we were with them. They said they will boycott elections come tomorrow. What is your take on that?
We must remember the rights, the vote is a right of all of us. There is no one who is having the power of not letting the community to go and vote. That one on its own, it is not right. Yes, we have heard about Marquardt's problem. The MEC of local government was there. Has been there almost 3 weeks, trying to solve the problems. And he has also indicated problems are there, but we have plans. So some of the people are even saying, no, we want it now. You must remember it's election times. So everyone is taking advantage of that. But I would like to plead to people of Marquardt, please do the right thing. Go and exercise the right thing that you have. Go and vote for any party that you want to vote for. But please don't allow anyone to stop you to do the right thing.
Thank you, Premier, for your time.
Thank you very much. Bye. This is my home time. Bye-bye.
That is Free State Premier Sisi Ntombela saying, of course, that she is confident to bring her vote here in her hometown. town, saying that a lot of changes will be seen, even though the municipality is still under administration. But she is confident that there will be improved service delivery in the area. And also touching on the burning issue in the Free State, we know that there's been a series of violent protests, especially Marquardt recently, where residents are boycotting come elections tomorrow. They're saying no one in the area will be voting, but we can hear the Premier is saying, of course, everyone has a right and will have to exercise the right of voting.
All right, Aphumelele, thank you very much for that report there. I'm joined in studio by Angelo Fick. He's the head of research at OWL Socio-Economic Research Institute, and he's hanging out with me for the next couple of hours while I'm holding seat here. Thanks very much, Angelo. So obviously we've seen a number of stories. There are a lot of recurring issues, people unhappy, service delivery protests and so on and so forth, people deciding not to vote. What's your take on some of the stories that we've looked at today?
So in the three stories in the three provinces in the southern half of the country that we've seen so far in the first half of this broadcast, we saw scenes in the Eastern Cape that, for those of us who voted in 1994, we wouldn't have imagined that a quarter of a century would go on and you would still see rural poverty of the kind that Mampeli Rampele and Francis Wilson wrote about in the late 1980s. The very beautiful scene of Mossel Bay, the description of George and Knysna as tourist havens. You know, 20 years ago, official research in this country showed that there was a migration of people to the southern half of the country. And so the question around, infrastructure having to cope with that migration, we knew this was happening. And those communities are also some of the most unequal communities in this country. If you look at the haves and the have-nots, let's go back to the Knysna fires of a few years ago. And, the stories, the textured stories of what poverty did to people who had what meager possessions they had destroyed and weren't insured and sort of relied on charity to have their lives put back on. Thanks to the gift of the givers. If we go to the Northern Cape, a sparsely populated province in which the IEC official could say only 7 more of these visits, and compare that to the densely populated KwaZulu-Natal province, where the IEC says they may possibly not reach all 100,000 people who need to cast the special vote.
Do you think since 1994 there has been a failure to anticipate, as you've just mentioned? If we look at ESCOM as the classic example, when we were told that as far back as the 90s, the authorities were told that, there needed to be investment in infrastructure so that we didn't miss the boat and we could support economic growth. And of course that was missed. And subsequently, billions and billions of rand were spent in the likes of Medupi and Kusile, which are currently ineffectual.
So that lack of planning is also backed up by a lack of delivery. So listening to the Premier of the Free State, by all means one has to agree with her. Things have changed substantially for millions of people in the last 25 years. But the question we have to ask ourselves is the kind of, should we say, progress that the Premier then claims, which is valid progress, it's admirable progress, is it appropriate to celebrate it after 25 years? Would that progress not have been admirable after 10 years? And if we can imagine that a Premier should not have to claim the building of a high school and the paving of roads 25 years later, that Premier should possibly be claiming higher forms of achievements. But because we've had this unequal delivery and we've had real problems with service delivery and rollout, corruption, maladministration, all of those problems have hampered service delivery. And so the question isn't how much has the ANC done in power. What many communities who are unhappy are pointing out is all sorts of things should have been done, they haven't been done, and they're unhappy. And their unhappiness deserves more than simply a response, once again, of being told to wait. And one of the researchers said that communities go to violence too quickly. We know from talking to people in communities that is often their last resort. It is what they do after 10 or 15 years of going via all of the channels and having, 1, no response, 2, having their response ignored. We also know this from municipal officials who say, I would like to do the following things, but I know that I will go nowhere in my party and I will be replaced within seconds if I do this. And that, I think, was even heard as high up as the Constitutional Court, where Chief Justice Mogoeng reminded us that party officials who are deployed are often conflicted because they're only deployed into government because of their parties. But once in government, they take an oath of office to be loyal to the Constitution and the people of South Africa. And if they do not do their party's bidding, they're often kicked out. And so that conflict, I think, is a real conflict that South Africa will have to address in the next phase of democratic governance.
What are your thoughts about the various pre-election polls that take place? Do you sometimes question who these people are actually polling in terms of who people will vote for? Because we're hearing a lot of dissatisfaction, people saying that they won't vote and so on and so forth. Do you think that they're anywhere close to the reality that we'll see post-May the 8th? And what's the value of them?
So I'm not one who sees predictive value, because we have learnt for, over various spaces in the world that often it is the poll that is correct is the one that was always seen to have been correct, retrospectively. I don't dismiss the polls, but I don't take them that seriously as social science. They're exercises in market research. There are all sorts of questions that serious social scientists would have of the polling mechanisms and techniques, telephonic interviews, and also timing. And the people, many of them who do the polls, will tell you these are not crystal ball visions into the future. This is what people are telling us 6 weeks in advance, 3 months in advance, and so much changes between, one, the publication of those results, and here one can think of all sorts of principles in physics and physical sciences of how the very publications of those poll results have consequences for people's consequent and subsequent behavior. And so I don't read them as biblical text. I don't think the people who create them read them as biblical text. Sometimes some of the polls are also attempts to create an outcome. And so I think South Africans reflect on what they see in the public domain as information, and their behavior shifts according to that.
Angelo, I'm going to interject there. I've got pressure in my ear. I'm speaking to Angelo Fick there, Head of Research at our Socio-Economic Research Institute. And cross now to Sipho Sturman, my colleague who's standing by here in Pretoria.
Well, a very good afternoon to you and our viewers at home. We're coming from the Union buildings, and this is where the Khoisan community has been based for several months right now, of course, with a number of concerns. But the reason we're speaking with the Khoisan community today is that they're saying that they are not going to be voting in the elections tomorrow. It's less than 24 hours to go, but they're saying that they're not voting, and I'm joined by the chief here. So if you can just please introduce yourself and just give me your title and just tell us why you're saying that you're not voting as the Khoisan community that's been camped here at the Union buildings.
I'm Chief Khoisan SA. The reason why we're not voting is because the promises this government has made to us as First Nation when we arrived on the 30th of November 2017, when then the Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa took our demands, which are First Nation status, our language to be official, issue of the land that they must talk to us, and scrapping of the colored identity. Still a year later, we are back at the Union building, arriving last year, 30th of November. So that tells us that the government is not serious when it comes to issues, demands that have been brought to them. They are full of promises, but no results.
And what promises were made when you had that discussion with the now President Cyril Ramaphosa, who was deputy at the time? But what sort of discussions and promises did you have with the President?
Well, the first thing that the President did was, in Parliament, he actually acknowledged that he received a memorandum from us at the Union building. But he also then said there that he will form a committee that will deal with the issues of the Khoisan people. But yet, we have not heard, not a phone call, anything, not even an email from the presidency about the issues that had been brought forward.
Don't you think then perhaps voting for a government that's going to speak to your issues would perhaps be the answer to some of your concerns? Doesn't not voting defeat the purpose?
I think not. The reason is that we cannot vote a party or a government in that has basically done nothing to the people. In our stay being here, we've seen lots of people coming here with different memorandums, handing over them to the government. At the same time, they're thinking that they will get results. Yet they are still unhopeful that when they return back. So voting for a government that does not care is not a good thing. So to the South Africans, We are saying that for those who are voting, if you want to support us, as you say, your fellow Africans, to support us is to vote against this government, the ANC.
All right, and now let's just talk about the fact that we know the inauguration has been moved from here, the Union Building lawns. It's going to Loftus Stadium there. You're taking credit for that?
Yes, surely, because the question that I'm asking, why? I mean, through all the years that where was inauguration taking place at the Union Building, why now that the Khoisan people are at the Union Building that you shift your inauguration? So to me, it tells me that the government do not want their dirty laundry to be thrown out.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Well, there you have it from the chief himself. They've been staying here for a number of months. I don't know if perhaps I can get out of shot. You can see they're staying in camp tents here. I think 4 months that they've been here, you know, asking for their concerns to be answered by the president. As he mentioned there, the deputy president at the time, Cyril Ramaphosa, came to see them, but they feel that their concerns have not been answered, and so they will not be voting tomorrow on the 8th of May, Nompu. And with that, it's back to you.
Thanks very much for that, Sipho. Now we cross to my colleague, Lerato Tipa, who is standing by for us in the Eastern Cape. Lerato, over to you. What's happening where you are? Lerato, over to you.
Hi, Nompu. Earlier on you saw us, I'm not sure if you saw us, but we were at a taxi rank. We were just trying to get the views of the general people about how things are and how they're feeling ahead of tomorrow's elections. Right now, like you're saying earlier on, we're trying to get the voices of people, young and old, to hear exactly what people on the ground, how they're feeling. Are they excited? Are they anxious? What are they looking forward to tomorrow to the polls? So we took a drive and we found a retirement village. For so long and for many years, many a times, it's the elderly people who sometimes feel neglected and sidelined, but who still say they have a voice and they deserve to vote in this democratic country. So I found two interesting people here. Charlotte, take us briefly. You're actually supposed to have special vote, and then when you arrived this morning, you were told that you're going to vote tomorrow, but you're not actually disappointed about that. You're looking forward to go stand the lines tomorrow because, like you said, you're driving a Mercedes-Benz.
Yeah, Mercedes. Yeah, thank you very much, Lerato. Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to it. I think that's something for everybody to do, is to vote. You know, we've got to come to a conclusion and vote right.
And why do you think it's still important for people, even at your age, to cast their votes tomorrow? And what kind of service delivery issues would you like the government that's elected to address, especially in terms of people living with disabilities?
Well, we're still alive, you know, we're still alive, so they've got to look after us. And, I mean, the best of all is my kids. I'm thinking of my kids and my grandchildren. I'm voting to give a vote towards their future. Both my kids and my grandchildren. My son just immigrated to Ireland for a better life there for his child, so it makes it difficult. But I still feel like voting. Still want to serve my country with a vote.
And then in terms of whoever's elected after the elections, what types of issues would you like them to address, especially in terms of people that are living with disabilities in the country?
Absolutely, people with disabilities. I think, you know, there is so much pain already for a long time with elderly people and children, especially children and elderly people. That's got to be looked after, and hospitals and the sick people and things like that. It's a big thing that's got to be repaired, you know, that needs a lot of attention. I would actually put I would ask that to happen. Those people must get sorted out first of all, and get children to school and jobs facilities and things like that. That's what I would pray for every day. Yeah.
And the next guest, Mambu, actually voted in 1961. I wasn't even born then. So when I was actually asking him, did you vote in 1994? And he's like, Lerato, I voted in 1961. And I was like, okay. And I thought people voted in 1994 were quite still old, but he voted in 1961. So take us back briefly to 1961 when you voted. How different was it to how things are now?
Well, I must say a big difference. Because those days,
there was only two parties you can vote for. Today there's quite a lot you can vote for. So you must decide now which one you're going to vote for. And my opinion is that the people must stop looking at the leader of them. They must look at the country, what the country needs. You know, we got children, we got everything. So what can you do? You must look at the future of the country. So that's why we must decide for who we're going to vote, and we hope that person or that party going to make a difference in this country.
And also you were saying that you're going to vote tomorrow and you're pretty excited. Whoever is elected tomorrow, what type of issues, just personally, would you like them to assist people like you with?
That's, that's a good question. Because such a lot of things must be changed in this country. And I don't think it will cost that much to change like hospitals, as she said, the hospitals, the schools, the clinics, and all that sort of thing. Because there's a lot of poor people in this country. They can't afford to go to hospitals, private hospitals. Almost go to, I've been in Livingston for 2 days, and I was sitting there and I was tears in my eyes, looking at the people who sit there for days and days to get help. So I hope they're going to do something about that.
Well, that was the voice of the elderly here at the retirement village in Port Elizabeth, saying that they need to improve the hospitals, make the health facilities more better for citizens in this country. But for now, in Port Elizabeth, it's back to you in studio.
Thanks for that, my colleague there, Lerato Tipa, reporting from the Eastern Cape. And now we cross to my colleague Bulelani Philip, who's standing by for us in Khayelitsha. Bulelani, over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Nompu. Good afternoon to you and to the viewers. Well, since the last time I spoke to you, I have actually made my way to Gugulethu. As I am standing here right now, I'm standing in front at one of the voting stations at Nonzame Educare Center. Of course, the voter registration or voter casting has been a bit slow today. From the information that we have at the moment is 90 votes have been cast over the past 2 days out of 174 applicants in this station. Of course, the presiding officers are saying that they expect the turnout to actually continue to increase as we head towards peak hour. But of course, we're continuing to get the views of the youth who have been coming in and out of this voter registration center. Now, joining me is Thembisile Cetshwayo. As a young person, this coming election, what does it mean for you? What are the issues that you'd hope out of this election would solve the problems of your area?
Okay, thanks. Mostly the problem of my area, you will find that we have an issue of high unemployment. In this area, we have mostly people that are, especially the youth, and also the crime. So most importantly, I would like mostly those issues to be addressed, especially, and also the issue of poverty. People are living in poverty in such an area. So the incoming president, I would like much more to deal with those issues.
Now, there's always this perception that the youth is apathetic towards the politics of the country, the democratic processes. Are you excited about tomorrow?
Yes, I'm very excited. That's the only opportunity that we have, that your vote is your right. And also you must make sure that you exercise your right by voting. That's very much important. I will also encourage most of the youth in South Africa to make sure that they do go to the polling station and do vote. The most thing about the voting is that you have a right, even anywhere, if you want to use your political right to exercise, that you can choose any political that is there, and also that it can represent what you are looking for. That is one of the most things that I'm excited about tomorrow.
Would this be your first time, or how many times have you voted before?
This vote would be my third time. I voted in 2009 and also I voted in 2014.
All right. Thank you so much, Thembisile Cetshwayo, one of the residents here of KwaKik in Gugulethu, just giving us a sense of the issues that he's talking about as the young people that they want the president or the incoming government to address after tomorrow's general election. On that note, Nompu will take it back to you in Johannesburg.
Thanks very much for that, Bulelani. And now we cross to my colleague Simpiwe Makanya, who's waiting for us in KZN.
Well, good afternoon to you, Nzenga, and good afternoon to the viewers at home. We are coming to you live from a small town known as Dandi, here under the Umzinyati district. Over 6,000 special votes were registered in this particular area, we understand. But going around Nompu, I can tell you that the IEC officials were visiting various families, those who had registered to participate in the special vote. They encountered quite a few challenges, and one of which was that you'd find that that person who had registered is now moved from that particular area and is staying somewhere else, and in some instances the phone doesn't work. So let me now
All right, so we've lost Simpiwe there. We're going to go for a quick break and of course have more election coverage for you.
Yeah, that's the ROC, of course, rolling coverage throughout the country there as we continue to unpack exactly what the situation is like in various voting stations across the country. We'll continue to give you that across the day as well. For now, however, that is the situation out at the Results Operations Center. Now, of course, we have touched on even the IEC, even in the Free State. We've gone all the way through to the Western Cape as well. For now, we will take a break. However, we still do have, of course, your breaking news, and we do also have some market news for you. But very quickly, let's touch on the IEC in the Free State, which says that the torching of community halls in Ramulotsi in Viljoenskroon will not affect elections in the area. 20 people have been arrested for public violence, which led to the torching of a hall and clinic. Residents of Ramulotsi, Kroonstad, and Steenrus in Maqhaka village, municipality rather, have been embarking on violent service delivery protests in the run-up to elections. Among others, they demand residential sites, water, and uninterrupted power supply. Free State IEC manager Itumeleng Liba says they have contingency measures in place to ensure the smooth running of elections in the province. In other news, Transnet chairperson Popo Molefe says the board elected to not extend former acting Transnet chief executive Tao Morue's contract because they believed he was not in a position to fully disclose all Transnet-related matters at the State Capture Commission of Inquiry. Molefe says it had been brought to the board's attention that there were matters that Morue was aware of but had not disclosed to the board. Morue had been acting as Transnet CEO for 6 months before his contract expired on April the 30th. Molefe is appearing before the State Capture Commission of Inquiry, currently underway in Parktown, Johannesburg. More on those headlines and, of course, those market news stories right after the short break. You're watching On Point. Next up, Market Sense.
Exe, ke sireletsa bokamoso ba ka le lelapa la ka.
Exe.
I want my voice to be heard like this. My exe is my truth. My exe is my weapon.
With my ex, there's no problem that can't be solved.
Vote in the national and provincial elections 8 May 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. The IEC needs your address before you vote. Your ex is your say.
Get the facts first.
In 1994, ek dink was ons almal was ook baie excited geweest.
For South Africa, art was never a good thing.
From a footballing point of view, there was never a separation.
Get to the truth.
There's still some serious issues in South Africa.
Maar ek dink die regering kan regtig probeer om harder te werk om
ke apartheid in Sutlile ke le ke sola ke batho ba rena ba democracy batho ba batsho e seng makgowa.
See what it all really means
Ek is geel, want dit is die kleur in die verkeerslig wat vir jou sê wees versigtig.
I still give South Africa red.
We are somewhere in between.
We're giving our democracy a green for sure. We're very happy.
Democracy Gauge, weekdays at 5:30 on SABC News, Channel 404.
Welcome back to On Point. We get into market sense now, and we get into some economic news. Business sentiment improving in April. That's on the back of peaceful political campaigns ahead of elections. Now, the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry's Business Confidence Index improved by 1.9 index points to 93.7 in the month compared to the March 2019 level. That's compared to April last year. The BCI has actually declined by 2.3 index points. Saki says sub-indices that recorded improvement include the Rand exchange rate against the major trading and investment currencies, higher share prices on the JSE, and real retail sales. During April, capital and financial markets remained relatively stable, while the Rand strengthened but remained unstable, unfortunately. Saki says the business climate and business confidence were impacted by the increase in political party campaigns ahead of the national elections. The organization says the common theme of election manifestos amongst political parties is to drive economic growth and job creation, as well as fighting corruption, and this seems to resonate well with the markets. The absence of load shedding in the month has also been favorable. Saki says the outcome of the elections should bring more clarity to business and enhance better planning and decision-making. Let's turn our attention now to how markets fared early on this morning in Asia, mostly rising today, pairing some of the previous day's painful losses as investors welcome news out of China that top trade negotiator will lead a delegation to Washington this week. That's despite Donald Trump's threat to hike tariffs. Now, equities across the region were hammered on Monday, led by Shanghai's worst losses in 3 years, after the president's warning fueled by frustration at slow progress in those talks. A mixed day of trading in Asia amid those tariff talks, of course, and as you can tell, the Nikkei falling 1.5% there to 21,523 points. The Hang Seng, however, did manage to move 0.4% higher there by close of trade, still below 30,000 points, but the Shanghai Composite 0.7% to the good, 2,926 points. U.S. stocks fell on Monday after U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to raise tariffs on Chinese goods, though he pared much of their early losses as healthcare shares rose and some investors remained confident, that's because of an eventual trade agreement that is expected. The Dow Jones Industrial fell 0.25% to 26,438, with the S&P 500 losing 0.45% to 2,932. The Nasdaq Composite dropped 0.5% to 8,123 points. Now, the most significant matter, of course, of late has been Donald Trump's tweet saying that, sorry, they will not do this anymore. They will not continue to lose to their Far East counterparts, that's China, when it comes to the story, of course, of how things fare with their trade agreement. Donald Trump frustrated at the situation and how slow it is going with regards to negotiations with China and the U.S. trade war, and saying that by Friday he would most likely add on to the tariffs that are with regards to China himself, going from 10% now to 25%. But is that just a negotiating tactic? We'll wait and see. On the back of that news, most of Europe is sitting in negative territory, and as you can see, even the FTSE 100 going down there to 7,311 points, so a sense of negativity coming through on that front. When you turn your attention as well to the South African market, you also find a sense of negativity has come through, especially even today. And even though we had tested at 59,000 point mark level and gone beyond that, we had hoped that things would perhaps fare a little bit better. We are still looking to perhaps salvage all the losses from last year. We still haven't done that as yet, but there is still the hope of that. Industrials and financials going down. Industrials were the biggest losers yesterday. Of course, Naspers suffering on the back of that China story, and that was certainly going to hurt them quite significantly, falling 3.3% yesterday. Checking in as well on the rest of the indices as well. The resources going up, so too is the gold counters, while the platinum stocks are up there as well, 32.80 on that front. Very quickly, let's check in on the commodities picture. And it seems that things perhaps are a little bit mixed as well on this front. Gold and platinum headed higher, but oil, look at that oil price. Now it's $70.65 a barrel, certainly a much better picture. Let's remember, of course, that the Iran sanctions have indeed come on board, but the United States has also increased their oil production to a record 12.3 million barrels per day. That's their highest as well ever. So that situation continues to be fluid. And a quick look then at your currencies as well, very quickly. 14.44 for a US dollar, 18.89 and 16.17, of course, a weaker stance on that front. So let's unpack that market picture now and see exactly what it is that's shaping markets. Bright Khumalo, portfolio manager at Vestag Asset Management, joining us now. Bright, thank you so much for the time, but the market itself has been, I think, probably the most difficult time is just the moment Donald Trump wakes up and realizes something is wrong with the world. And Monday was that day.
Yeah, look, you know, it was a very interesting weekend because you had Friday with the jobs number, you know.
Yeah. A very positive one at that.
Exactly, lowest in about, what, 64 years, something stupid like that, which is good for America. And then Trump was like, no, I don't want that to be the center stage of the news. I just want this trade war to end. And it's, you know, it's giving Xi Jinping a nudge to say, hey, look, buddy, come to the table.
Yeah. You think this is just a negotiating tactic? I mean, he's just pressurizing him, right?
No, but he has to do something to force, you know, Xi Jinping to come to the table. And this is one of his tactics to get him to do so. But I mean, 325 billion US dollars and a further 200 billion US dollars on, you know, on goods that are being imported to the US is a lot. It's going to hurt for China, but how long can China, you know, hold off such things?
Is China the only, will China rather be the only losers in this scenario? Does it not really change things with regards to the way people deal with the United States from here on?
Well, I mean, the biggest loser, you know, I've always said when I come to a show, it's the consumer, right? Because they have to pay more for the same goods they used to enjoy at a cheaper price. You know, your iPhone was $1,000, at 35% is going to be, you know, 1,000 something. It's
now
insane.
you can come to South Africa and buy that iPhone.
We've got our own problems because we have 50% on top of everything else. So we've got our own problems. We're not, you know, the cleanest shirt in the hamper, unfortunately.
Yeah. What about that oil price then? I mean, that's bound to, it's been the story that's continued, and even now with these fears, that's bound to hurt it a little bit, I suppose. Going down to $70, and as we said there, $70.65, we're definitely happy. But the oil exporting countries themselves will certainly not like it at that price.
Yeah, well, you know, I think this only just works for the US, to be quite honest with you. You know, if I had the power to, you know, control the oil price like, you know, the US has, you know, you sanction certain countries, you bully everyone not to use their oil, and I can actually rev up the reserves on my side of things, so I get more money for my country. Of course I'd do it. So it makes sense, right? It makes economic sense. But is it good? I don't know. It's good for us.
This is going to be tongue-in-cheek. But is Donald Trump a little smarter than we took him for granted?
Look, Donald Trump is not really dumb, huh?
Evidently. I mean, clearly the moves he's made have certainly borne fruit. Look, the fact that he cut taxes in the United States with regards to corporates didn't necessarily translate into the best job creation figures, even though I stand corrected in a way that, you know, unemployment does sit at 3.6% now. But they did buy back a whole lot of shares at the same time too, which did
for shareholders.
Which did ramp things up.
Earnings and a lot of things,
Yeah, so if you increase it in that sense, did that cut in taxes really help the U.S. economy as a whole, including consumers?
I haven't done the maths in terms of, you know, trying to understand how much the federal government has taken in tax revenues, but I don't think it actually went down. So it's probably had stayed the same or a bit higher. So, which is in a way, it's just, moving the chips around, but in a good way, because companies get to do more what they love and they pay less in taxes, and shareholders are the ultimate winners.
Yeah. Okay. The earnings season out of the United States as well. 76% of companies on the S&P 500 have now, sent out their quarterly earnings. And initially, we had expected a negative trend with regards to those earnings. Now they're up around 3% on average. It's a really good time in the US.
Of course. I mean, we had the government shut down and everyone was like, oh, the earnings are going to be hit. Just watch out. And unfortunately, it hasn't been like that because that economy is firing.
Or fortunately.
Or fortunately, because the economy is still firing on all cylinders. And these companies also, majority of them do have earnings outside of the US. So the US is not, the end and the beginning. The US is just part of the earnings. I mean, you look at companies like Nike, Apple, they talk more about offshore. Netflix, they talk about more growth outside of the US than in the US. And I think 2 years ago, you looked at Netflix, it was just only a US story. Now it's like a global story. Now it's a very different company. Some of the people haven't actually heard of Spotify 2 years ago. Spotify is a big company offshore already. So those are just good examples of companies that are beating earnings and, they're doing their fair share to help us shareholders put more money in our pockets.
We can tell where your interests are. Let's talk about Anheuser-Busch InBev very quickly. Their earnings are expected out later today. That's just before the markets open, I think, in the United States, if I'm not mistaken.
I think they're out,
What does that sentiment tell you about the company? And I ask just because they came to South Africa basically
2016,
rushed through that whole SAB Miller story.
Yes.
And we don't know what's kind of happened.
Well, look, they're still responsible for one in every 3 beers. They've increased their volumes by 1.3%, which is slightly, a touch below expectations, which meant their earnings were up 8.2% instead of the 8.9% that everyone was expecting. But, you look at majority of the markets they operate in, it's Brazil, the US, Europe, Asia, Nigeria. They're doing exceptionally well, where volumes where they're going backwards or staying the same is countries like South Africa. So I don't know. I think they're doing very well. What we usually look at in a company that big, which is, grows through acquisitions, you look at, their ability to raise funds. And here they're going to be floating more of their stock in Hong Kong, which is good. And that will help them retire more of their debt. And from the SAB Miller deal, they're getting cost savings of about $100 million per quarter, which is incredible.
Still a behemoth then.
Yeah, still a behemoth. And I think they're able to pay down that debt, which everyone was worried about.
We can only hope. We'll see, though. We will see, right?
And I mean, it's starting to translate in the share price, right? So the share price is slightly moving into the right direction. Maybe it'd be something very interesting to look at if you don't have morals like me.
Bright Kumalo, we won't take that one too harshly on you. Bright Kumalo there, portfolio manager at Vestact Asset Management there, giving us the lowdown on just how the markets have fared. Of course, it has been an interesting time. Some negativity, yes, in the local market, a bit jittery as well ahead of elections, but we'll continue. As I said, more election news coming up right after the short break. Do stay tuned. This is On Point.
SABC News is producing more than 150 election-related programs ahead of the May 8th election. If you think our content is not in line with our editorial policy, direct your complaints in writing to complaints@sabc.co.za. Complaints on election-related broadcast content should also be lodged with ICASA's Complaints and Compliance Committee by sending an email to bmashihu@icasa.org.za or call 012-568-3233.
We're explorers. We always have been, endlessly curious, always looking for answers, for new frontiers, for new stories. Because that is who we are. From script to screen, from yelling action to taking you on a journey. Radio producers, script writers, on-air presenters, news reporters, sports analysts. We spend late nights creating captivating storylines and earlier mornings keeping you informed, educated, and entertained. For us, it's not a job, it's a calling. We do this and more because you do your part. SABC TV licenses, made possible by you.
Welcome back. Now let's get into some other news stories. Now police have reiterated that they are ready for tomorrow's elections and are closely monitoring hotspots both in KwaZulu-Natal and the Northwest Province.
Nationally, the two provinces prioritized is Northwest as well as KwaZulu-Natal. In Northwest, we've prioritized 8 areas, which we also refer to as hotspot areas. And our total deployments, except other interventions, it's over 5,000 that is complement deployed in this province.
Some areas in the province have been identified as a hotspot. Then can you please lay out your plans as of such areas? How many are you dealing with them?
Okay, because of security measures, I'm not going to give all the security details, but what I can give you for now is that for all of the hotspot, the stabilization interventions deployed from both national as well as the province, and that is also supported by defense complement in terms of the integrated forces. While we have deployed on the stabilization intervention to look at those particular crimes, we have also deployed members of the police to secure those particular voting stations.
For now, that brings an end to the news update. Of course, I will have your news stories at the top of the hour. Again, we do say goodbye to our SABC3 viewers. But before that happens, of course, my colleague Paul will have your weather details coming up next. But for now, it's goodbye from me. See you at the end of this.
The SABC News mobile app is your one-stop digital portal to all the news you need. Stay connected with the latest in breaking news. Watch the SABC News channel along with clips and live streams of all the big news events. And listen to all the SABC News radio stations live, including podcasts and much more. Simply download the SABC News app to your Android or iOS device from either the Play Store or the App Store. SABC News, independent, impartial.
We're explorers. We always have been, endlessly curious, always looking for answers, for new frontiers, for new stories. Because that is who we are. From script to screen, from yelling action to taking you on a journey. Radio producers, script writers, on-air presenters, news reporters, sports analysts. We spend late nights creating captivating storylines and earlier mornings keeping you informed, educated, and entertained. For us, it's not a job, it's a calling. We do this and more because you do your part. SABC TV licenses, made possible by you.
We do not just speak, we let every voice in our nation find full expression in language and in culture. We do not just teach, we empower all people with education. We do not just bring you the news, we place you where the news is happening. We do not just entertain, we take you on journeys. We do not just broadcast sport, we create an arena for sporting heroes to inspire you. Ours is not just a job, it's a calling to ensure that everyone in our nation is informed, educated, and entertained. We're able to do this because you do your part. SABC TV licenses. It's all made possible by you.
A very warm welcome to the weather desk. Let's take a look at those conditions that we're expecting over the country for the next 2 days. We have a surface trough sitting over that interior of Namibia, extending into that western interior of the country, causing this 30% chance of showers and thunder showers over that interior of the Northern Cape, becoming scattered over that eastern interior of the Western Cape and that extreme western part of the Eastern Cape for today. Cold front approaching the country from the west and will make landfall tomorrow in the afternoon over Cape Town. Fog patches expected in the afternoon over that western coastline of the country, so please be on the lookout, as poor visibility is a possibility over those areas. And tomorrow we have that cold front over that interior of the Eastern Cape, and we have a secondary development of another cold front that is approaching the country from the west also and make landfall tomorrow in the next day in the afternoon over those areas, causing cold conditions over those areas and also a 30% chance of showers over those areas. We have 30% to 60% chance of showers and thunder showers over the central interior, extending towards that coastal line where it's scattered for tomorrow. Morning fog patch is also a possibility over that low belt of Mpumalanga, extending into KwaZulu-Natal and that extreme eastern part of the Eastern Cape. So please, let's be on the lookout, especially when we're driving, as poor visibility is a possibility over those areas. We have a warning of runaway fires over that interior of the Northern Cape, extending all the way towards the northern parts of the Eastern Cape for today. So please do not start any unnecessary fire over those areas. Heavy downpours are a possibility over that northern interior of the Western Cape for tomorrow. So please, let's be on the lookout, as also strong winds are also possible over those areas. That's all the weather I have for you. Let's stay tuned to SABC.
Get the facts first.
In 1994, ek dink was soos almal, was ek ook baie excited geweest.
For South Africa, art was never a good thing.
From a footballing point of view, there was never a separation.
Get to the truth.
There's still some serious issues in South Africa.
Maar ek dink die regering kan regtig waar probeer om harder te werk om
ke apartheid in Sutlile ke le ke sola ke batho ba rena ba democracy batho ba batsho e seng makgowa.
See what it all really means.
Ek is geel, want dit is die kleur in die verkeerslig wat vir jou sê wees versigtig.
I still give South Africa red.
We are somewhere in between.
We're giving our democracy a green for sure. We're very happy.
Democracy Gauge, weekdays at 5:30 on SABC News, Channel 404.
The Drakensberg is the name given to the eastern portion of Great Escarpments, which encloses the central Southern Africa plateau. The name means Drakensberge in Afrikaans.
The SABC News mobile app is your one-stop digital portal to all the news you need. Stay connected with the latest in breaking news. Watch the SABC News channel along with clips and live streams of all the big news events. And listen to all the SABC News radio stations live, including podcasts and much more. Simply download the SABC News app to your Android or iOS device from either the Play Store or the App Store. SABC News, independent, impartial.
Xolani Mkiva, says that they believe that the king should be released and that they are not being opportunistic.
The last 4 years, we have been engaging with government. It cannot be a post-colonial government that begins to jail a king in a context of what actually happened.
Bobby Solomons, he's the spokesperson of the Alex Shutdown Committee, the multi-billion rand Alexander Renewal Project. Nothing came of that.
Community wants to know what really happened to the monies.
The creative director of the label, Mansu, that of course means black is beautiful in Sesotho. What has been your experience in that regard, given, you know, some of the more established labels that you have managed to work with?
It is hard. 15 years is a long time. There's a lot of sacrifice for your family to make for you.
This is the thing. This is it this morning.
In my time, I've truly seen it all firsthand. Angizwanga, ngizibonele ngalawam amehlo. Going through my photographs and reflecting on my memory box really brings back many life experiences that are bittersweet and humbling. In this, my homeland, I've entertained tourists and offshore traders. I've evolved from dealing with the battering system to trading foreign exchange. I've traveled to the ends of the world and tasted a diversity of culinary palates. To outsiders, I have lived alongside wild animals, tamed some, and collected livestock as wealth. So my memory box is overflowing. And don't get me wrong, I'm not bragging, but in fact, I'm breaking and hurting deep down inside of this heart of mine. Why? What for? I hear you ask yourself, my fellow Africans, friends and family. The images I have of me are those of the point of view of my onlooker, not those of myself, the subject at hand. I'm choking and suffocating at the chalice those anthropologists and filmmakers tie around me as some sort of grand name tag. Stories have been made and told of me, not of my own words. Films and graphic images have entertained millions of audiences at my expense.
We're live for you right here in Auckland Park. Good afternoon and welcome to it. This is On Point. My name is Arabile Kumete. Of course, we will be crossing to the Results Operations Center where the latest press briefing is happening. But for now, let's check in on what's happening with regards to your news headlines. And this is your lead this hour. A community hall, clinic and a councillor's house have been torched overnight in Viljoenskroon, that's in the Free State. And also, it's the final day of special voting, and officials say it's been smooth sailing thus far. And Transnet chairperson Popo Molefe testifies at the state capture inquiry. Well, it's just under 18 hours to go until voting begins in earnest in South Africa. But for now, we head on over to the Results Operations Center where the IEC's Sai Mababolo is heading off a press briefing. For now, let's take you straight to that now.
Tomorrow. Firstly, everybody must be a registered voter in order to vote. And since you registered on the roll, you will remain on the roll. There is no possibility that you may be removed from the roll if you did not re-register before these elections. So the 26.7 million consist of persons who have been on the roll since the voters' roll was first established in 1999. So voters can SMS their ID numbers to the number 32810 or call 0800 11 8000 to check on their registration and their voting station details. The contact center will be open from 7 until 9 to assist voters with any queries that they may have. For your interest, the contact center took over 4,500 calls yesterday. We also have a mobile app which is downloadable from the App Store, as well as a website which can be used for confirming the registration as well as the voting station where persons are registered. Secondly, voters must take a valid ID document, which is either a green barcoded ID book, a smart card ID, or a valid temporary identification certificate. Branches of the Department of Home Affairs will be open tomorrow between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. to assist voters to obtain temporary identification certificates as well as collect their smart ID cards. Voters whose addresses are not reflected on the voters' roll will be required to provide their addresses prior to voting. Nonetheless, proof of address is not a requirement for purposes of voting. If voters are voting in a voting district in their province, they will be handed 2 ballot papers, one for the national election and one for the provincial election. Voters should ensure that these ballot papers are stamped at the back by the election official. Voters will then cast their ballots and place their marked ballot papers into a ballot box. Voters are reminded that the secrecy of the vote is protected by law, and it is an offense to take a photograph of a marked ballot. The past 2 days of special votes has helped to iron out early teething problems and ensure that everything is in place and ready for tomorrow's election day. However, as you can imagine, with an operation of this magnitude, there were some challenges encountered yesterday and in the early part of this morning. The Electoral Commission is encouraged to note that a significant decline in community protests this week. In those instances where protest action did continue, the South African police services were quick to intervene to restore calm. A minimum number of 2 police officers will be deployed to each voting station, and the SAPS will remain on high alert in high-risk areas to ensure no disruptions to the elections. Citizens are reminded that any disruption to elections constitutes a criminal offense. And our view is that enough protests have been had, people's issues have been heard. Now is the opportunity for the voter to express themselves. So tomorrow is about the voters. Tomorrow is about people who are going to be making their political choices, and the necessary space for that must be created by everyone, including community leaders who are leading community protests. In one apparent crime-related incident yesterday, a group of knife-wielding men confronted a group of election officials conducting home visits in Giyani and confiscated 93 unused provincial ballot papers, which they then destroyed. Fortunately, no one was injured, and the cast ballots, 7 of them, were secured and not affected. The SAPS were quick to respond, and 2 suspects have been arrested and are now in police custody. 2 vehicle accidents involving staff were reported over the past 2 days, but fortunately only minor injuries were sustained. The Electoral Commission is investigating reports of instances of the double envelope system not being used in certain parts of the country yesterday, as well as some ballots, sporadic incidents of some ballots that were not stamped at the back. The stamping of ballot papers immediately prior to them being issued to voters is an important security measure. These incidents were discussed in the National Party Liaison Committee this morning, which has made some recommendations to the Commission, including that the Commission accept the legitimacy of these ballots if verified. The Commission will ultimately make a decision on whether these ballots are included in the count or not. Additional reminders of the importance of stamping ballot papers and of the double envelope system were sent to presiding officers and deputy presiding officers today. The Electoral Commission has removed a deputy presiding officer from a voting station in Binoni, Ekurhuleni, following an investigation into a video showing a party agent assisting with the transfer of special votes from the special votes back into a ballot box at the voting station. Party agents are not permitted to handle any election material and may also observe and raise objections if circumstances necessitating that arise. A pack of 3 unused and unassembled ballot boxes was found on the side of the road in Zaneni, Limpopo. Investigations show that it was lost in transport by an area manager. This person has been suspended from office and will be discharged from duty for gross negligence. The ballot boxes were recovered by the South African Police Service and returned to the Electoral Commission. The Commission appreciates the vigilance of party agents and voters in monitoring the election process and in bringing to its attention potential problems. This should be done firstly at the voting station through presiding officers, and if not resolved, then it should be raised through existing channels, including the party liaison structures. Providing as much detail of any incident, including where and when it occurred, will significantly speed up the investigation process. Some rain was reported yesterday and today in KwaZulu-Natal and the Eastern Cape. Fortunately, this is not as severe as to disrupt the voting process. The Commission is pleased to know that the South African Weather Service is predicting relatively mild and fair weather conditions across the country tomorrow, with no severe weather warnings. Some windy conditions are reported for the southwest parts of the country, but we don't have a lot of tent voting stations in that area and hope that the wind will not be strong enough to impact our operations. With regard to the update on special voting, we do not as yet have final figures for special votes cast over the past 2 days, but indications are that this has proceeded well throughout the country. We did arrange for additional resources for home visits in the Eastern Cape, which has the highest number of home visits, as well as Northwest, which had reported to be slightly behind schedule last night. We are, however, confident that all special votes will be completed today. We have also received special votes from 113 of the 121 foreign missions which were cast by voters outside of the Republic on the 27th of April. The 8 outstanding batches of special votes are from the following countries: Algiers in Algeria, Brussels, Belgium, Shanghai, China, Lubumbashi, DRC, Asmara in Eritrea, Tokyo, Japan, Sao Tome and Principe, Caracas, Venezuela. All these are now en route and we hope to receive them imminently. The special votes cast overseas will be counted at the National Office of the IEC on Thursday morning in front of party agents. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, the Electoral Commission calls on every South African citizen to celebrate our 25th anniversary of democracy by ensuring tomorrow's election take place in the spirit of 1994. Let voting continue peacefully, calmly, and without disruption. And let us once again show the world that South Africa remains a shining light of democracy in action. The campaigning has now been done. It is now the turn of voters to have their say. Let's vote excel, and may God bless our democracy, our country, and these elections. Our clarion call once again, excel, all voters to the ballot box.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you very much, SCO. Excel indeed. I'm going to open the floor for questions. You tell us your name and then raise the question. Let me take the first group of questions. I've got my colleagues on the floor. They've got microphones. I saw a hand in front. Can I get their hands so that we take them as a badge? I've got 3 from this side. Can I have my colleagues, please, with microphones? Yeah.
Lula Mamakia, SABC. If you can comment on allegations that some voting stations don't have, not voting stations, but on the special vote, blind people do not have, there are no ballot papers that are in Braille. And how then are the blind people assisted if ballot papers are not in Braille? Secondly, what is the Commission doing in assisting, how is the Commission doing in assisting people with mental challenges in voting? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Tobel, Moloko Moloto from ENCA. I just want to know if all the voting stations yesterday managed to open for those who wanted to walk in, and in areas that are likely to be plagued by violence, what assurance are you giving to voters in those areas that they would be safe?
Okay. There's another question. I saw the third hand. Okay, maybe it's been covered. Let me, am I missing any other hands? We covered, no? Okay, there, sorry.
Francis Loramachate from Progressive Independent News Agency. What is it that the Commission is doing to make sure that the elections are not, some people don't think they are not free and fair, particularly looking at the incidents like such in Zanin where the IEC equipment, was that material was found on the road. What is it that you're doing to make sure that the elections are not, some people don't feel that they are not free and fair?
Thank you. Okay, let me pause on that note. Let me allow my team to respond. CEO, Dr. Masuku. Vice Chairperson is coming through. Commissioner Love.
So with regard to the issue of people who use Braille, and we do know that not all people who are blind prefer to use Braille, but for anybody who uses Braille, every voting station has been equipped with what we call the universal ballot template, which is a cardboard facility that has Braille on it, and we have 10 of them, 1 for the national ballot paper, and then 9 for each of the different provinces. Those were, as I say, all voting stations have been trained and equipped to use those, and anybody asking for that assistance had a right to receive it.
we haven't heard specific concerns and complaints in that regard, and we hope that none arise. With regard to people who may require assistance because they are dealing with mental challenges, to the extent that people are requesting that assistance either in the form of support for them, maybe if they are in some way autistic or in any other kind of sense requiring special visits, those home visits, those are part of the special voting requests, and we hope we've been able to accommodate anybody in that regard. Similarly, at a voting station, anybody who requests assistance will receive assistance at the voting station. With regard to the issue of the mitigating perceptions and concerns about compromising the freeness and fairness of our elections. As we all know, this is a collective endeavour. The Commission has put in place a number of measures to deal with this, but as our CEO mentioned to you earlier, we really count on citizens and we count on party agents and we count on observers to assist us. And where there is an identification of a particular issue, a particular problem, we ask you to report it at that particular voting station, but if needs be, to escalate it with as much detail as possible. We also call upon all South African citizens not only to vote. Whenever you registered, you must know that your registration stands, and we ask you to go and vote in your numbers. But in addition to that, we ask all South Africans to respect those who choose to go and vote, because that is their exercise of freedom of speech. And that's part of you helping us to make this an electoral process a free one. And to all the political parties, most of them are very, very well schooled in the issues that pertain to tomorrow, to enabling people to go and vote. And again, we ask you to call on your supporters, to call on your membership, to ensure that our electoral code of conduct is well upheld. I will leave the CEO to cover the issues, because he did mention some areas where there were problems, to actually give you the quantity of voting stations that face difficulties at different times in terms of opening.
Thank you very much. In fact, very few voting stations did not open yesterday. It's 2 in the Bushbuckridge area, 1 in Reicher Park, in Ekurhuleni, Gauteng. The 47 that had not opened in the Eastern Cape, after the intervention of the South African Police Services, we were able to open them and they were all functional, as was the case with those voting stations that did not open on time in KwaZulu-Natal. In Khayelitsha, in the northwest, 2 voting stations there did not open, and that's where we had problems with the motor vehicle of one of our conflict panelists being banned, as well as the area manager's car being stoned and so on. So that is the total sum of voting stations that were operational. Hence, our view that we made a very good start yesterday, and that momentum has been carried into today. We are functional where we need to be functional today, because the reality is that if all special votes have been cast, that voting station will stop operating. There's no business to transact beyond the last person voting who's on the list. I think we've laid, again, a good basis for tomorrow. The 2 days has given us the test that we needed to our processes. We'll fine-tune them as we should, and tomorrow at 7 o'clock, all voting stations should be operational. And we should have the conduct of election in an orderly fashion at all voting stations tomorrow, and we are confident about that.
I don't see any other hands. Looks like questions of clarity have been taken care of. Going once, twice, thrice. Looks like we're good. Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, just to confirm that tomorrow has been declared the Excess Day in South Africa, when South Africans from every part of this country will be voting. So tomorrow when we wake up, we hashtag Excess South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, the leadership of the IEC, thank you very much. Excellent.
All right, and so there we have it. The IEC has just delivered its press briefing saying a number of things, basically saying that the special voting process has gone well over the past couple of days. They say that the process has enabled them to iron out any imperfections in the process so that they're 100% ready for tomorrow's main election. The IEC also noted that it's illegal for people to take pictures when they're engaged in the voting process. So young people especially, don't be taking selfies when you're voting. It is illegal. And another issue, in terms of those 3 ballot boxes that were found and it's still sort of sealed, semi-sealed, on the side of the road in Zanin in Limpopo, apparently the IEC official responsible for that has been suspended and is expected to be discharged for gross negligence. So they're taking that issue very seriously indeed. Well, I'm joined by Angelo Fick. He's head of research at where are you from again? I forgot.
The Arwal Socioeconomic Research Institute, which is known as ASRI.
Right, super. At ASRI, and we're just going to discuss 1 or 2 issues with him before we cross across the country. Thanks very much for joining us, as always, Angelo. So, Angelo, very interesting. They've taken that issue of the ballot papers left on the side of the road in Zanin very seriously. Sacking the person, isn't that a bit extreme?
No, not at all, because it does send a message down the line that come the main voting period tomorrow, that all those people who are employed by the IEC to do their jobs take seriously what they have to do. And let's not forget, this happens every election. There are individuals who behave in rogue ways, and the IEC has to rein them in, because remember, it relies on thousands of people to do its work for it. And so those people, despite their training, may decide to behave in an odd way on an odd day for some reason, and discipline does need to be handed down, because if it isn't, it allows people to question the entire process.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And just talking about what happens after the election, if, say, for example, the ANC wins convincingly, do you think they'll be in a position to be able to fix some of the calamities that they've presided over in previous times?
Well, the test, I think, will be not just whether, we learn as South Africans that elections are not magic potions, that the person or the party that wins doesn't automatically immediately fix things, that it actually takes much more effort from all 58 million South Africans to behave like civically literate citizens and to force those who are elected in their name and are their servants to work for them. The African National Congress, should it win, has the very big challenge of dealing with its own internal divisions, its own internal problems, and with the consequences that those internal divisions have had in its very specific cadre deployment program. Because the problems are not just in the leadership level at the top, it filters down to every level in municipalities, in provinces, in regions, where people have experienced, and that's what these protests are often about, the consequences of internal problems in the ANC and far too close a match between party and deployment in government.
If, say, the unthinkable happens and we get to national coalition politics, depending on how the vote turns out, how effective do you think a coalition government would be in the South African context?
Well, it would be new territory at any level above municipal level, and we know that at the municipal level, coalition governments have been hampered by precisely those internal divisions, not just between parties, but intra-party divisions. And so it would be a real test for the South African constitutional order if we have any kind of coalition governance above the municipal level. And that would be uncharted territory for which I certainly have no blueprint, and would be interested, should this happen, to see how parties put their partisan interests aside and do the thing that they've accused the governing party of having done incorrectly, doing it correctly and putting constitutional governance ahead of partisan interests. And that, I think, is not something that I can easily see happening at that level, given how it has failed at the local government level.
Listening to the IEC just now giving their presentation, do you feel that we're ready to go in terms of tomorrow's election?
The IEC certainly does seem to be ready to go. It seems ready to deal with the challenges that it has ahead of it. What I think we need to remind ourselves of is what our duties as citizens would be in this country at this moment, and also to understand the complexities of the situation. And part of this means not disseminating information that we do not have confirmation for on social media, and also once we engage in the social media process around what we see as shortcomings in the IEC, to have followed the dutiful thing, which is to report the issue directly to the IEC and to escalate the process should that be necessary. So if people think there has been some kind of mishandling or misbehavior inside the voting station, if they feel that the ballot paper hasn't been stamped appropriately, they must contact the presiding officer of that station immediately. They must escalate it and not just disseminate information.
Yeah, all right. Thanks very much for that, Angelo. We'll continue with you. Angelo Fick there speaking to us on the elections. We're going to cross to my colleague now, Ayanda Mhlongo, who's standing by for us in KZN.
Well, a very good afternoon to you, Nompu, and good afternoon to our viewers coming to you from the Results Operating Centre here in Durban, where we've just had a briefing this afternoon from the IEC on the situation on the ground. And one can say that it's been a smoother day for the IEC today. A number of challenges, of course, that we reported on yesterday with public demonstrations, thus affecting the start of the special voting process in this province over the past 2 days. It was expected that over 100,000 people who had made applications to cast their special votes were going to vote. And despite the challenges and the hiccups in certain areas yesterday as a result to access, due, as we know, and a couple of weeks ago, parts of Durban and the province of KwaZulu-Natal were hit by severe floods, which cut off access in certain areas. And so that was one of the other challenges that the IEC had. But the briefing that we had that we were expecting to make over the 2 days, they were able to go to 42,000 homes, and of the over 31,000 visits to the voting stations, 12,000 voters came through. So they said despite the challenges, they've actually did quite well yesterday, and of course the remaining of those votes were going to be cast today. The picture, as I said, today looking much better than it was yesterday. A few service delivery protests in certain areas, but they did not hinder or upset the election officers. Of course, there are still some concerns, security concerns, new areas that have now been reported as volatile, and areas which the police are focusing on, that being around Escort, several areas in the northern parts of KwaZulu-Natal, and 1 or 2 areas in the south. But also there's been quite a big focus here in the Durban CBD. As you know, that there has been those ongoing protests by municipal workers, and there's been a number of service delivery protests as well here in the city of Durban. So they're looking at police looking out in those areas. An additional 1,700 officers were deployed this morning to various areas across the province of KwaZulu-Natal. Security agencies have also said that there is going to be an additional pool of police officers that are going to be stationed in strategic areas where they will be able then to respond should the need arise. We also have the South African National Defence Force that has already been roped in certain areas to assist. Also, again, going to be more soldiers that will be standing by in the event that they are needed to come and assist insofar as the security. But we understand at the moment they are assisting in terms of those areas where access has been rather difficult, where bridges were washed away. So they've brought in the military in those areas to assist, so people are going to be able to cross. But you're speaking about it being nationally a good dry run for the IEC Nompu to test its systems. Certainly it's been from the IEC here in KwaZulu-Natal a very good 2 days. They have said they were able to see where they had issues they've had to, in certain areas, increase capacity, and that is because they were able to pick up with issues today. Also the relationships and then working with the respective party agents. We've got a record 31 political parties that are contesting here in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. This year. So there's been quite a push by those parties, we understand, all wanting to be part or to accompany IEC officials to the respective homes. But they're saying that it's been a good 2 days for them to run through that. And just speaking about what has been going on with the IEC, I now have the pleasure of being joined by Mr. Mawethu Mazure, who's the acting Deputy Chief Electoral Officer. Thank you very much. I know that you've been in Johannesburg for a couple of days, but thank you very much. Welcome back home.
Thank you very much for the welcome back. It's good to be home and also good to see how things are coming together in preparation of tomorrow.
Listen, I was just saying that the briefing, you said a better picture today. It seems that things were running a lot more smoother than the challenges that we had yesterday, but still certain issues here and there. We did pick up that your officials were threatened in certain parts of the province. What is the situation around the safety of IEC officials?
Well, generally the safety of this election tomorrow and also for the 2 special votes days has been very good from SAPS. Escorts, interventions at the right moment throughout the province, and nationally it's been a similar response from the police. In this province there were threats towards staff because of community protests in Bergville, in Jozini, in Umhlabuyalingana, but most of those did not materialize because of the interventions politically and in terms of security. And for today there were hardly incidents reported that interfered with the voting process. So voting in terms of special votes is continuing very smoothly today.
You've said that the day was going to be used to test your systems. Just overall, are you happy with the past 2 days? Equipment is all there. You did say that you're sure that all your officials have gone through the training. Any areas of concern, possibly?
At this stage, our areas of concern are basically human, in the sense of people being able to wake up in the first instance, and secondly, if people have ailments and they can't be at the voting station for whatever reason. Other than that, we have no worries at this point. We have sufficient ballot papers for everyone who's registered to vote, and we also have sufficient ink to make sure that you don't vote twice. But on top of that, we are stamping the ballot papers, we've got our voters' rolls, so we are all set to go in terms of tomorrow.
Speaking of tomorrow, just to wrap tomorrow, obviously it's the big day. For those that have been unable to cast their votes in these 2 days, they also have tomorrow. But just overall, we had issues where the floods had washed away, affected some of your infrastructure is concerned. I know you've put in some temporary measures there, but how's the picture looking like specifically for tomorrow?
The tomorrow, in terms of Weather Bureau projections, it's looking very well, and it's a fair weather system. It's not too hot, not too cold for us being in the winter season, but also the prediction of rain is very low at 30% or less, which is good. So in terms of the infrastructure in this particular province, the provincial government led by Khokta has done very well to rehabilitate a number of areas in terms of access roads, the venues that we might use. We are also aware that there are venues that are now being used as shelters for those who are displaced by floods, and in those instances we have established tents to accommodate the voting process. So it's all systems go in terms of our preparedness. The logistics were tested yesterday and today with the special votes, and we're happy to note that we were able to open most voting stations without trouble.
Before I let you go, Mr. Mazura, I know you had one plea to our voters tomorrow to get to those voting stations on time.
Not on time. We just say get there early and vote, but do 2 things: bring an ID but also check that your ballot paper is stamped at the back so that it is authenticated and verified as a correct ballot and a valid ballot.
All right, thank you so much there for your time, Mr. Mawetu Mazare, the acting Deputy Chief Electoral Officer, just taking us through, of course, today being a smooth day for the IEC, but also what we can expect tomorrow. It's not over yet. We still have 2 or so hours to go before the 5 p.m. cutoff, and we'll be giving you an update later on this afternoon. As far as were they able, has the IEC been able to get to the 70,000 home visits that they had planned, and whether or not those that had applied for the special vote to go to the voting stations, whether or not they've been able to get the 31,000 applications as they had received. We're going to leave it here for now, Nompu. It's back to you.
Thanks, Ayanda, for that update. Ayanda Mhlongo there in KZN. Well, that's all from us, well, from myself for now. I would like to thank our analyst, Angelo Fick. He's the head of research at the Owl Socio-Economic Research Institute, who was standing by just analyzing some of the things that are happening in and around the election. At the top of the hour, Peter Ndoro will continue with the electoral coverage, but I hand back over to Arabile Gumere.
Thank you so much for that, Nompu. Out, of course, at the ROC, that's the Results Operations Center. We'll continue to cross through them, of course, right through the day. And as she said there, Peter Ndoro will be there as well at the top of the hour. Now, 2 people were arrested as well. We'll continue with some other stories, rather, right after the short break. Do stay tuned. This is On Point.
In a UN report, scientists say climate change is getting worse.
1/3 of our food sources for the population come out of the ocean.
We spoke to people who have been directly affected.
We have lost a lot of cattle. Gemsbokvlakte, Tosca, gebied, and Jakkalskop. Everywhere you will see there's animals dying.
I've lost 2 of my cattle this January.
Africa's demand for clean drinking water is rising.
Drinking water is a top priority.
The next day when the water comes back, it's dirty.
I have implemented a level 5 water restriction, effective immediately.
Environmentalists seek solution to preserve the planet.
This is Cape Kirpa, which is also one of the endemic species that is only found within the Western Cape, so it occurs nowhere else in the world except in our water systems.
Welcome back. Let's continue now with our SA Decides coverage. The IEC in the Free State says the torching of a community hall in Ramulotse in Viljoenskroon will not affect elections in the area. 20 people have been arrested for public violence, which led to the torching of a hall and clinic. Residents of Ramulotse, Kroonstad and Steenrus in Motaka municipality have been embarking on violent service protests in the run-up to the elections. Now, among others, they demand residential sites, water and uninterrupted power supply. Free State IEC manager Itumeleng Diba says they have contingency measures in place to ensure the smooth running of elections in the province. Now, polling stations reopened their doors for special voting today. It's the final round for this ballot, and electoral officers say it's been smooth sailing so far. Yesterday, the IEC said it was satisfied with the first day of special votes, and so too today for national and provincial elections held throughout the country yesterday. Now, despite a few incidents that marred it. However, blind people who went to the polls have complained that until the electorate system has fully brailled ballot papers, any efforts to accommodate visual impaired voters will be second best. SABC News reporter Nozintombi Mia spoke to visually impaired broadcaster Rulani Baloi, who cast her special vote on Monday.
Well, a very good day to you. On this second day of special votes, we are here at the SABC's headquarters in Auckland Park at the Radio SABC News studios to speak to one of the top reporters, Rulani Baloyi, TV presenter, radio presenter, and news editor extraordinaire who has a visual impairment and cast her special vote on Monday, and we talked to her a little bit more about how that process unfolded for her. Thank you so much, Rulani, for joining us. How did the voting process go for you yesterday?
It was actually very quick, very quiet. When I got to the polling station, they told me that they were expecting 84 people yesterday. So I was one of the few people who got there first. So all they had to do is to look for my name because I had pre-applied to vote earlier. And then, yeah, it went very, very quickly.
So the process was relatively easy, straightforward. But as a person living with a visual impairment, do you feel that you were given enough capacity, enough assistance during that process?
I'm still hoping that in my lifetime in the SA electoral system we'll have properly core-brailled ballot papers. I mean, I would imagine one day I will have my own free vote where nobody else knows how I voted. I'll be able to vote like you, where I don't have to rely or trust in one other person to know how I voted.
And surely that must have made you feel very uncomfortable that you had an assistant with somebody who now actually knows what your vote was, and your vote should be your secret.
You know, my vote, I have learned to live with the fact that my vote is not a secret. And actually, even the IEC officials they were saying, can we just see how this person is helping you vote? What if they're not helping you the way you want? I said, no, one person knowing for me is enough. Thanks very much, but I'll stick with this one person who's helping me. I wouldn't want you guys to know, because you never know who's going to tell who and how will people discuss your choices.
All right. And you also voted in 2014. What was the difference between this year's process and the process of your voting in 2014?
What happened in 2014 is that I voted on the Wednesday with everybody else after work. It was actually nice to be in the crowd, to listen to people talk, but then you get there because before the 2014 elections, I had interviewed some IEC officials and they told me, don't worry, you're going to get access to a secret ballot. When I get there, they gave me papers which I thought, I don't know what they were trying to do, but it was not easy for me as a blind person to use. But I think all they have to do is to speak to the National Council for the Blind and to the Blind Workers Organization and say, how do we help us to properly braille this so people can be able to know where they are marking? Because, I mean, how many documents which you have seen, they are both written in print and they're also written in braille, which are actually easy to read. Yeah. I would imagine it's doable. We just need the will and the right people to want to implement it.
Yeah. And my final question to you, Rulani, you cast your special vote on Monday because you will be working on Wednesday. Yes. Just tell us a little bit more about what kind of work you'll be doing on Wednesday.
We are going to be, as the radio news department, we all be focusing on the elections. National elections are a big deal in South Africa. Always, we are going to be focusing on making sure that we give our listeners the proper, the exact, accurate, concise, and immediately information that is relevant, and when it happens, we have to make sure that we have our bulletins on time from 4 o'clock in the morning until late in the evening. We are going to be working, and we are saying to our listeners, we will be all over the country, and we are going to try to bring you all the news that you need to know about the elections, from what time your stations open, if there's rain, if there's any other eventualities, you will hear it first from us.
All right, thank you so much, SABC's Rulani Baloyi, just giving us a bit more insight about what the special voting process was for her on Monday when she went to cast her special vote. She will be working on Wednesday, so she needed to make sure that she cast her vote between Monday and Tuesday. And we're going to let her get back to the newsroom here at Auckland Park. And with that, it's back to you in the studio.
Our very own Nozintombi Mia there, of course, with Rulani Baloyi, really detailing the aspects of the visually impaired as it comes to the voting. We'll continue with our SA Decides coverage now. 2 people were arrested in Bedle village outside Giyani. That's for disrupting special voting yesterday. A group of people attacked IEC officials during their house visit to a special voter. Now, ballot papers were destroyed in the process. A case was opened yesterday at the Maheva Satellite Police Station. Our reporter Mike Maringa is in Giyani.
Sitting under the tree there is Mr. Jackson Ricotso. He's one of the few people in this village who have applied for special votes. But unfortunately, when IEC officials arrived at his gate, they were ambushed by a group of people who came here and indicated that they want to work with them. These IEC officials were left traumatized because their tools of trades, the ballot papers and the ballot boxes, were taken away from them. As you can see, this is the group that was working yesterday to assist with the casting of special votes. And let me bring now Salva Ricotso, one of the IEC officials who were working yesterday when this incident happened. So Salva, what actually happened?
Tolo loko kari visita mindyangu ya vadyuhari ku va votisa. Loko hi fika emutini wa tatana Jackson Ricotso, ku te grupu ya vanhu va bafana a va tele swinene. Hi laha va nga fika va kombela ku la ku tirha na hina. Loko ha pfula mavoko ku va tirha na hina, va hi sungule ku hi vutlela leswi a hi tirha hi swona, va swi handzulela hi le xikarhi.
And then kombela bindzela la ka gwela e vanhu va nga na mfanelo va votisa ka nkarhi wa sweswi ka ha vote vangani namuntlha ambalangi uniform wa mi nga ri ku tirheni.
La ka gwela a hi fanele hi votisa 64 wa vanhu ka ha vote 7 ntsena. Lavan'wana hinkwavo a ha kotanga ku va votisa. Leswi endlaka ku namuntlha hi nga koti ku vota i mhaka ku switirhi leswi a hi ri na swona hinkwaswo a swi handzuleriwile hi le xikarhi.
And xo hetelela swi tikomba hi nga ku mhaka leyi nga va emichavisini mi traumatized in some way. Mi titwa njhani after what has happened?
Ku chuwa a hi chuwangi ngopfu hi ku hi vaakatiko lava hi tivaka timfanelo ta hina. Ntsena ko va mhaka leswaku ku tirha hi ya mahlweni karhi hi chavisiwa a hi nge swi koti.
That was Salva Ricotso, one of the IEC officials, who is indicating that they are willing to continue to work, but they are scared because there is no protection. Basically, what you were saying is that a group of people, like I was explaining earlier, came here and threatened them, took everything that they had. And let me bring now the area commissioner, Mr. Jim Matebula, just to round it up. Mr. Matebula, we understand that there's a lot of trouble in the area. People are intimidated. There is no voting. As IEC, you must be worried.
Yes, I'm very much worried, but we are busy fixing the problem. Only the one station that is left, that is in Gilazi, but we are busy fixing it.
And the recent information that I got is that at Mngongoma, people are prevented from voting. There is no there's no casting of special votes as we speak. Does this not in any way give you an indication that elections might be disrupted tomorrow?
No, that is not my area. Fortunately, it's another person's area. In my area, I'm trying to fix it now. That's why I'm here.
Okay. And lastly, what do you make of the incident that happened yesterday? Did you see to it that the employees here behind us receive counseling?
Yes, we are busy trying to cancel this employee through the IEC in Giyani. That's where the problem, we have reported the problem. They are busy cancelling them. We are busy working together.
That was Mr. Jim Matebula, the area manager of this area where we are, the Guela, Mbedle and the likes. We're not sure as to what will transpire tomorrow because as is now, the situation is a little bit tense. We are from a school that was supposed to be a polling station. It's unfortunately locked. It's not only voting that is affected. We must also talk about schooling as well because the locking of gates has affected the process in that we are seeing kids here in the villages lingering around because gates are closed. We will be monitoring that. We will be watching as to what is happening around Mopani, Guela, Mungongo, Mbedle and other villages in particular. And for now, it's back to you in the studio.
Well, that brings an end, of course, to On Point this afternoon. South Africa, just over 16 hours remain until you can cast your vote and make that decision, of course, of who you want to lead this country forward. Do remember to stay safe and keep calm, of course, and do remember to cast that vote tomorrow. From me, that's where the buck stops. See you again tomorrow.
Hello, I'm Nana, and I want to tell you a bit about Economics Unbound. It is a live studio current affairs program that brings an understanding of the economy, how it operates, and how it is managed. The show seeks to include ordinary South Africans in purposeful and well-informed discussions about the economy.
The whole corruption and having to pay people to get businesses, it's like killing our businesses.
While providing them with enough information to make better economic and financial decisions.
And we need to start thinking of new ways of creating new structures that are relevant at the time.
Through this program, audiences can look forward to 30 minutes of deep and tough questioning on the issues of the week.
Why do you think that our economy lends itself to such collusive behavior and such concentration of monopolies in key sectors?
This is the SABC News Channel, independent and impartial.
When news happens around the world, we will bring it to you. We will keep you informed. Each day, every day, our news team digs deeper, getting all the facts to provide comprehensive reports to what's important to you. We cover all corners of the globe. SABC News, independent and impartial.
I saw the opportunity here in Botshabelo, like there is no beauty spa here in Botshabelo, and my dream was I want to open my own beauty spa in Botshabelo. I want to be the very first person to open a beauty spa in Botshabelo.
While the popular saying warns against judging a book by its cover, Botshabelo-based businesswoman adopted this code and demonstrated that there is more to the beauty business than the interior. Inside her tiny shack is a well-kept beauty spa with variety of beauty treatments. Tiny shared with stories untold where her love for beauty therapy began.
Growing up at a young age, I used to play dolls, and I started playing with the hair of dolls, plaiting it, doing them like some makeup. I was also used